This week, Paul Battista, CEO of Polarity, joins us for an interview to talk about Polarity's power-up sessions. Then Rick Howard, CISO of The CyberWire, joins us to talk about the Cybersecurity Canon. In the security news, Nagios exploits, hacking a Boeing 747, bypassing container image scanning, unpatchable new vulnerability in Apple M1 chips, stop blaming employees, especially interns, spying on Mac users, don't tip off the attackers, security researcher plows John Deere, when frag attacks, and security by design. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
Keeping up with security issues across thousands of web assets without the right approach to web application security is a daunting task. Get ahead with web vulnerability scanning automation from NetSparker, a leader in dynamic and interactive application security testing, known for its ease of use and accurate results. Detect a wide range of vulnerabilities in all legacy and modern web applications, address security bugs at scale by automating the confirmation process, automatically prioritize vulnerabilities, and assign actionable tickets to the right developers in their native workflows for rapid remediation. For more information on how to scale application security with ease, visit securityweekly.com/NetSparker.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man for whom I have no witty intro today, Mr. Paul Asadoria.
Welcome to Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode number 696, recorded on May 27th, 2021, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. To my left, Mr. Larry Pesce.
Yeah, here back in studio after a couple of busy, crazy week things or something. But coming to you in 5G.
Yes, our first in-studio guest, actually, since the pandemic has broken out. Mr. Paul Battista is here in studio. Paul, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for having me in studio. Appreciate it.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Very nice. We just need one more. I mean, we had 4 people on set for the first time. We got to work on that. Doug was going to come down, but
hey,
he had stuff going on. So.
Yep.
On the lines remotely, Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Looking a little crooked. You're not very level.
Oh, something hit my camera. I just noticed I am a little crooked. I'll fix that during the show. Hey, it is incredible to see a guest in the studio. I'm feeling left out, but love to be here.
Yes, we would love to have you here, Lee. So hopefully you can visit us very soon.
Heck yeah.
If you want to stay in the loop, all things Security Weekly, visit securityweekly.com/subscribe. Subscribe via your favorite podcast catcher to our YouTube channel or sign up for our mailing list, join our Discord server, and follow us on the newest live stream platform, that's Twitch. Join us for our June 3rd webcast at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where you'll learn about pen testing tools and why every organization should be using them regularly, complete with a full demonstration of new features in Core Impact and Cobalt Strike and their ability to talk to each other. I saw a preview of it today. It looks really awesome. Join us on June 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for our technical training on insider risk to learn how to quickly mitigate exposure risks. Please visit securityweekly.com/webcasts to register today. /on-demand, of course, gets you to the complete archive. For your viewing pleasure, my teleprompter says. We are going with landing page because my teleprompter also says you should go to securityweekly.com/polarity, augmented reality for your data. It is one of the coolest utilities for security professional, or maybe even non-security professional. You primarily sell to security people, but I could see it being used by a wide audience. But it is awesome. And it's nice to have you here. It's really weird talking to a guest here in studio rather than on one of my many monitors.
It is nice to be in person at any meeting now, right. Not on a Zoom call. Absolutely.
Yeah. So cool, dude. So what's going on, man? How have you been?
Been busy. Been not traveling. But been busy growing and scaling and really driving value. So yeah, mostly cybersecurity professionals for our customers, but we work with Intel folks as well and other missions outside of that.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So what are we covering today? You've got some newer kind of features, or?
Yeah, so love to talk about, I mean, just for a background, I guess, on Polarity for folks who haven't heard what we do or what we accomplish or the value. I'll kind of give the background and then jump into some of the newer stuff we're working on. So the kind of quick overview here is Polarity addresses the problem of too many places to search and not enough time. And traditionally that's solved with enrichment, right? Bringing in data into your ticketing system, your logs, your events, and really trying to fill out that context. For Polarity, we do it as an overlay because we recognize that inevitably you have to break out of that system. You have to go somewhere else. You have to detonate malware in a VM, or you have to look at some raw log. And so we're doing it as an overlay across everything. And that overlay essentially is like augmented reality, as you mentioned at the beginning, so we can provide that context and thoroughness across the job. Now,
does it work with VR headsets?
VR headset and goggle is unnecessary, so it's in the
that was like your claim
level.
to fame, is that you don't need a headset.
No need.
But I've got
for
like
a
an
headset.
extra one laying around. I was kind of hoping to use it. So
I mean, if you want to use it in there, it would be a little redundant, but you could.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't worry, Paul's good for redundant.
cyclical redundancy that I was talking about earlier.
So,
but were there any checks at the end?
Maybe.
Okay, just checking.
Oh boy, that was.
Sorry.
We digress.
So for us, the new thing we got going on right now is some training. And so not your SANS courses, Larry,
It's okay.
not your full week, right? We recognize that folks are strapped for time. They're fully booked, they're fully utilized, and you might only have a few minutes to get some education in. We also recognize that a lot of the learning that gets done in the cyber field is done on the job. It's done while you're trying to solve the mission, while you're doing that investigation, while you're doing that pen testing. And that's where the true learning happens. And we're not going to kind of kid ourselves and say, hey, we're going to give you a 30-minute webinar and really educate you on a topic and make you an expert. That's just not practical.
You need at least an hour for
You
that.
need at least a week on a SANS course, right? Maybe an hour. So
45 minutes.
what we've decided and what we've been working on is 15 minutes of training where it's showing what's possible and showing the basics. So we're really instructing on where can you go to learn more later on this topic when you need it. When it is time to do it on the job and really learn and become an expert at it, let's show for 15 minutes, hey, here's how it works. So as an example, one of our first trainings was on regular expressions, a skill set that many cybersecurity professionals need, use time to time. And if you don't have that skill set yet, hey.
Were you going to say the regular expressions are something we need to know and love? You're pretty twisted if you.
I think you should love regular expressions.
I think you should, but it's a rocky relationship.
Like many, it could be a love-hate.
Unless you take Joff Dyer's class.
Joff is it a full day?
I don't remember, but he'll be by later to
Yeah,
tell
you
us
got
about it.
15 minutes on regular expressions.
15 minutes.
That's what I want to spend on regular expressions.
Like, how much could you really learn in 15 minutes, right? You could kind of get some basics. You're not really learning about, look aheads and look behinds. Insert joke or pun there. So, yeah, how much could you learn? So the goal there is, hey, show what's possible. Then if you need to learn more, well, take the longer course or get right to work, get right to building. And the pain you'll have while you're building, you'll do the real learning. And so we're spending 15 minutes and then we have a leave behind, which is with Polarity Free Community Edition, a cheat sheet that comes with that training, a cheat sheet on regular expressions.
I love that. I could have used something like that today because I was coding in Python and I realized that my file system stuff was a little rusty because I was coding in not Rust. I was coding in Flask. So I didn't, and some of their file system stuff comes from Flask library. So I was a little rusty. I could have used a 15-minute primer on like making directories, making files, writing files, reading not so much reading files, mostly writing and structuring file names and stuff like that. Making sure files don't the whole file system stuff. You could cover that in Python in 15 minutes easily. I spent my 3 minutes reading that Stack Overflow article or that article from this in 3 minutes on the other function, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so after you learn it, we'll have you on and you can do our 15-minute training on that module, right?
That'd be awesome.
But the goal there, so then if we were to do that, right, if we were to say, hey, what is that content, boil it down to 15 minutes, that means there's no fluff, right? There's like very little or no marketing possibility because you have 15 minutes, right? It's just all content. It's important stuff. At the end of that, we would say, all right, well, what are the points that we want to remember so that if you don't touch this for another 6 months, what can we put in the product, in the free product of Community, so that you can go back in there and find it? So like on the regular expression side, an example of that would be, hey, if I type in IP in Polarity, show me the regular expression for an IP, or email, or domain, or all these kind of common regular expressions you might find yourself writing, and then you can work off of there as an example on regular expression side. The second training we did, we had a partner on. So we had Andrew Morris, the founder of Gray Noise, come on and give training on the Gray Noise data itself, like how to write queries on and what is Gray Noise. And then the leave behind there is a free Community integration with access that just works out of the box. So you can leverage that data if that's tomorrow or if it's 6 months from now. You don't have to remember that training. You just need to remember that it's possible.
I liked 15-minute training. I think there's a place for that, certainly. Because, I mean, you can go find a video online and stuff like that, but it's rarely of the quality that you would want, right?
Yeah, and the density of it is also kind of key, right? So if you find a 15-minute instructional video, so I'll bring it back to like something that maybe you're trying to figure out how to video edit, right? Something completely outside of security. Yeah, you can find on YouTube that video of how to do that thing, but it's usually buried inside of some other longer video, and you're clicking ahead and trying to find that content.
Oh man, like Pluralsight, like I don't need the first 3 modules of like what this thing is. Like, can you just show me some coding examples? Like, I know what it is. Yeah, it's annoying.
Yep. So goal there is, hey, cover 15 minutes, show beginning to end what's possible. Then hopefully the references later to go find how to actually do the job you need to get done.
Right. How many of these have you done?
We've done 4 so far. So the first one was regular expression. Second one was with Gray Noise. The third one we did on CyberChef. So CyberChef, for those not familiar, is a utility released by GCHQ that does manipulation of data. So it's this idea of take a data structure or data element and build out recipes, and they call it like bake. You bake them. So it could be decoding, encoding. As an example, let's say
someone who was using this. It looks really awesome.
Very useful tool. So here I'll give it like a user example. You're looking at a command and control comms, and you see a data element in there that you don't recognize. And you, as an analyst, you'd say, hey, well, what is that thing? Is that a command that's being run? Is it data that's being stolen? And so you might want to go manipulate that thing. Is it base 64 encoded? Is it XOR? I don't know what the encoding is. I don't know what it is. It's just a bunch of raw data. You would take that, drop it into CyberChef, and brute force it or provide a bunch of different recipes to try to actually do analysis to figure out what that might be. And so we gave some basic training on that. We didn't cover all of CyberChef. CyberChef has hundreds of different functions you can do. There's no way we could possibly cover what's the full breadth of that in 15 minutes. But we can cover the basics and show what's possible so that folks know to go use that tool later when it's appropriate. And then the leave behind for that training was an integration with Polarity with CyberChef just baked in. So if you throw in, let's say, into the Polarity search bar, you throw in something base 64, it has this something called magic function. And if it meets the magic function criteria, it'll give you a suggestion like, hey, this looks like hex, or this looks like base 64. What would you like to do? I suggest you do this recipe against it, and then you might get some value out of that. So that was the lead behind there. And then the last training we've done, so 4 so far, was on Exploit Finder, which I've talked about on the show before. And this is that idea that, hey, exploit code is all over the internet, and I need to spend some time searching, potentially. If I'm going to be thorough, I have a vulnerability. Does an exploit exist for that? I should go check and run Google searches and Google Dork to try to find if there's an exploit code out there. We've automated that research, and so we've added some functionality to exploit code, Exploit Finder integration on the Community Edition, and so we showed that new functionality. So
do you search GitHub?
We do, yeah, and that's actually one of the most popular sources that comes back. A lot of POCs are out there on GitHub now.
Agreed.
One of the things we've done since the last time I was on the show talking about Exploit Finder is enabled free-form searching or free searching. So before it was just CVEs you'd put in there, And now you can search a vendor name, an application name, or an application name with a version number, even an author. If you want to search on it, show me all the code, all the exploits written by this specific security researcher.
That's really awesome. What does the open source give me, Paul, versus the commercial? I know we talked about this before, but I've forgotten.
Yeah, no problem. So the free version, the community edition of Polarity, gets you a whole bunch of integrations out of the box that are pre-configured and some that you can configure. But basically, you're kind of fixed into just a couple you select and then a whole bunch that we've given you that we think are going to be beneficial, right, and provide value to you. Exploit Finder being one of them, Yara Finder, finding Yara rules, and a sandbox searcher being a couple other examples of free integrations that are just available in that Community Edition. Community Edition allows you to search by selecting text and holding down Control-C. So that's a shortcut key. So you can just hold it down and it federates out all those searches.
And you're limited on the number of integrations.
You're limited on the number. You can select kind of 2 to customize a bit, and then you're limited on the ones that we've put on the account.
Gotcha.
Yep. And we're continuing to add more there, so there'll be more value that we give over time as we build these out. And as we do these trainings, many of these trainings are coming with additional integrations. The Enterprise Edition gives you a lot of those enterprise features like role-based access controls and various configurations out of the box, as well as the augmented reality view, so being able to highlight inline, and an on-prem server. So the biggest reason that a lot of our customers will move to Enterprise is to bring that server in-house. This allows them to search across their internal sources, whatever repositories like SharePoints and the Google Drives and the Splunks and the Elastics, all those things that are inside.
But I don't have to write those integrations, right? You have those that I can say, if I have, whether I have the server in my cloud or whatever, in L Cloud or on premise, I can say if I've got a Splunk server, I can integrate it.
That's right. So unlike many other kind of, I'll say, and we integrate with many of our partners on the SOAR side, right? There, you don't have to go through and write a playbook or write an integration. We have over 150 of them where you just pull those down that integration and it's going to work. All you're doing is adding in whatever necessary configurations, like adding in an API key, for instance. But otherwise, you can pull it down. If you want to write your own integrations or connect to some custom internal repository or data source, you can do that.
With the Enterprise version.
With the Enterprise version.
Because I used the Community Edition. I was like, I emailed you. I'm like, I want the Enterprise version. I'm like, this is awesome. I want to use it more.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. Once you have that server, you can build against it. So you can basically...
And collaborate. I think that was the thing for me, is I wanted to collaborate with my coworkers.
That's right. The other big thing you get with Enterprise is note-taking. So you get collaboration, of course, on the integration side, being able to connect to the same repositories and manage accounts and groups, but you can also take notes on whatever text you want, whether that's names or IPs or hashes or domains, whatever you're coming across, you can take notes on that. And those are done in a very collaborative way as well across your coworkers.
Right. I can see people tying it to an asset inventory. Is that pretty common?
Very popular integration, yeah. Recognizing the host name structure. So they'll usually pick like however they're structuring host names, and we'll recognize that, and then we'll pull back data on, maybe it's vulnerabilities, maybe it's, what's the purpose of the asset, who's the contact I need to call if that asset's involved in an event, and
or like, what the hell is this thing again?
What is it for, right? Absolutely. Sometimes it's just an internal name, right? And even with tied into that asset information, it says, hey, this is this thing, but the security analyst might still not know what that thing is. It's just a code word. They pick up the phone, they call someone, they figure out what it is, and then that's where the note-taking could just fill in that asset details on the fly. And then from that point on, they have access to that, not just in the application where they figured that out. Let's say they figured that out in the ticketing system while they're looking at it. Rather than take a note in the ticketing system, if they take a note there with Polarity,
wherever it shows
up in the future, across any tool and any workflow they do, they're going to have that note.
Yeah, because when we were doing some product testing in the lab, securityweekly.com/reviews, we were running all these attack surface management monitoring solutions, and like you'd run a new one, and you're like, wait, I recognize that host or that whatever before. I'm like, where was that? I'm like, that would be that's why it's so popular in enterprises, right?
One of the other things we can do with Enterprise is capture analyst telemetry. So this is all the searches you do as an analyst and what you searched, like all your sources, and whether there was a positive result or not, and where you searched it from potentially. And so what this gives you, and what I'm finally proud to say we solved, one of the initial problems we set out to solve, we called IP deja vu. It's like you look at an IP and you say, I swear I saw that before.
Seen that before.
Why does it look so familiar? And then you lose time searching your notes, searching the internet, searching classified sources. I was at government prior to this to try to figure out that context. And what we've done now is with capturing analyst telemetry, we can use that as a data source. So we can provide right back and say, hey, the first time you saw this was on this day in this application. You've seen it 1,000 times since then.
Right.
You should have recognized it. I don't know why you're looking at this, but and now here's the last time you saw it. And oh, by the way, 2 of your coworkers are looking at this as well.
That's really awesome.
So
Lee?
don't we have a link to the, is it the community edition through our Polarity link off of the Security Weekly site? So
Paul, what is it?
People want to get started with
securityweekly.com/polarity.
they go to town on that link, but if they need the enterprise version, they need to reach out to a different channel.
Yeah, if you're looking for the enterprise edition, feel free to reach out. Just polarity.io, go to our website, and there's a demo link there that will get you in touch with us to get you set up with enterprise.
It's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah.
What are some
Sorry, I chuckled because you said demo link. I thought, don't we have a working one? Sorry.
What are some of the most common use cases, Paul?
So you touched on one, right? Asset is a very common one. It really falls into the framework of you can define three things: what to recognize, what action to take, what to overlay. And so the what to recognize usually falls into the category of assets, as you mentioned. It could be user IDs. Hey, who is this person, right? Do they normally travel? Do they not travel, right? Are they work from home? Which is very common these days, of course. Yep. Is this the IP they normally come in from when they work from home, right? So pulling back all that type of context, connecting out to your threat intel platform if you have one, connecting to intelligence sources directly or open source feeds as well, and orchestration platforms. So connecting to your orchestration platforms and kicking off playbooks. So you might have a situation where you're looking at something, you might say, was this in an event already? And we can check the ticketing system, we can check the orchestration platform and tell you if it is. If it wasn't, if it's new, you would know right away, and you can hit a button to kick off a playbook and maybe start an investigation if that's appropriate for what you're looking at.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
On the government side, a very popular use case is fake social media accounts. Looking at, hey, is this a real account or not? As you can imagine, is a pretty tough topic that we're dealing with.
See, and I thought you were going to say creating fake some social media accounts, but I'm glad it went the other way around.
What's the most popular requested feature?
That's a good question.
Or do people just write their own integrations?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is definitely the integrations. When they mention one maybe that we don't have would be a popular one. The nice thing is now that we've been delivering to enterprises for many years now, that list is getting shorter. So most of the time when someone asks,
and they're written in JavaScript. You can write them in JavaScript.
They're written in JavaScript. They run as a Node.js module on that on-prem server.
Gotcha.
And
it sounds like you made it pretty easy for people to do that.
We've definitely optimized because of that use case challenge of recognizing that everybody's going to have a slightly different use case.
Yeah.
And if we're going to maximize value out to our customers, we need to make the system flexible enough to be changed by the customer. One
of my issues, Paul, is when they make it just super hard to write any kind of integration. You know what I mean? Like I was looking at, I don't know if I want to name the product. It's an open source product, but has to do with the Stream Deck, right? And in order to add your own module, I was like, wow, that's going to take some study. Like I got to read all their documentation, set up a whole development environment. And it just looked like compared to other things, looks like I've written like Nmap module. We've written modules for something. A lot of times it's pretty easy, but sometimes like not so much. Like that's a heavy lift. So I think my advice to you is make that as super easy as possible, because otherwise you're just the bar is going to be too high and people aren't going to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. it depends on what you want to do. It can be really quick and really straightforward if you're just doing a simple API search, right? Very quick. A lot of example code. This is the benefit of having a lot of pre-existing integrations, plenty of code to build off of, so you can learn from other people's work already.
Right.
If you're doing something simple, like the first integration I wrote, I think was take a Unix epoch time and convert it to human readable.
Yeah.
That's like 2 lines of code,
Nice.
right? Like super simple. The line of code to recognize that something looks like a Unix epoch time, and the line of code to convert it over.
You can modify ones that are there. Like, can you fork it easily?
Yeah, very easy to modify. So an example where that might be appropriate is something like a Splunk or an Elastic. You can have the data in Splunk, and based on what that data is, you might want to change the logic to display it in a different way, or display a graph or visualization. Right. And other folks might want to just say, show me the count, show me how much it's in there, or the first time it's in there. So,
I don't like limitations in my software. I mean, it's why I run Linux. I just don't want to be like, if I'm going to break it, I'll own it, right? That's it's where, like, don't try and restrict me on stuff to save me from myself. Like, I'm a big boy. If I break it, I'll work how to fix it, or I'll just start over, right?
Do you know how many times I've done that?
Yeah.
Started over?
Sometimes you can start over.
Yep.
And I was looking at the Stream Deck stuff, and it's not Stream Deck software, so it's BitFocus Companion is the open source for your Stream Deck. I'm sure many of us have probably played around with it. But when you execute a shell script, it limits you to 20,000 milliseconds, and then it kills it.
What?
And after trying to hack around it, I can tell you it probably does the equivalent of a kill-9, because even though I had scripts that were ignoring signals, like a sig term, it still killed them. So I don't know how it was killing it, but it was like super hard to figure out how. So my point with Paul was like, I went to go figure out like, well, how do I modify that? And it's like all the JavaScript is in .pack files, so like they've packed it all. So I would have had to basically make my own distribution to be able to get into that code and modify it, and or create a new module to let me run a shell script without restrictions. But I was like such a heavy lift. I'm like, I don't have time for that right now.
So me thinking like, yeah, you don't have time for that right now. I think it might be a quick solution, just hackery, like create a shell script that executes but kicks off another shell script that you really need to do.
Still kills it.
But the original one finishes.
Child inherits the parent process ID from a shell script.
Yeah,
we're getting off topic. Yeah.
Damn it.
You can use the trap command to tell it to ignore signals, but it was still killing it because in Linux and Unix systems, you can't ignore the kill signal for -9.
Right.
Which I'm like, okay, that I understand.
Yeah,
like I accept that.
That makes sense.
I accept that.
Yep.
Yeah. It was. I know. Why? But you're going down the.
Yep.
You know, because I'm like, wait, how do I hack this?
Yeah.
It's definitely a hack at that point, right? Because you're trying to work outside the boundaries of the constraints that were made.
Yep.
And that's what I like about your platform, because it doesn't sound like you have. If there's constraints like that, I can easily work around it, customize it for myself. Obviously, you've got a support issue if people start doing that, right? But I would imagine the people customizing it are all pretty senior people that are kind of like us. Like, if I modify it and I break it, it's on me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a balance, right? So for us, we recognize what we're good at, we recognize our value, and you try to put your constraints near your value, right? You try not to extend outside of that value. So for us, the value is on that setting up the searches and the overlays in terms of the augmented reality on top of the screen, right? That's where our value is. So operate within the constraints of what to recognize, what action to take, what to overlay, right? And the overlay window is where you put that overlay. So if you're operating within those constraints, we try to give maximum amount of flexibility. Now, one of the things that was important just, as a startup, as a company trying to provide value out to cybersecurity professionals as fast as possible, is we did need a base of integrations that provide that value. So it's that time to value for basic stuff should be just run a command, pull down the integration, and set it up by adding an API key. No code, right? Don't touch any code, just set it all up. And then get to a certain amount of value for that customer. Then the customer says, hey, this is really awesome. What if I connected it to this internal system where we have this data that's relevant to our business, right? That's relevant to what we do as a business. And then that's where they'll say, all right, let's write some code, connect to that. And then at that point for us, we're providing so much more value beyond what they even bought the platform for. And obviously that's good for renewals, it's good for expansion, it's good for referrals. So
it's interesting because I don't think of what you do, Paul, as necessarily automating the workflow. you're automating tasks inside of a workflow, which it's super valuable, but it's sometimes counterintuitive to think like I'm usually trying to automate my workflows, but automating those individual tasks is really what you're after, and there's some huge time savings in there.
It's definitely very augment the analyst side, right? Augment the pen tester, augment the operator or the analyst, not replace them. Definitely not a replacement side. And then so when you say, all right, well, what are we going to automate from an analyst perspective? There's the time savings. So we say, all right, we're going to automate the busy work, the research, right? This is, back to the pen test example, the 10 sites I would have gone out and checked if I had, if I wanted to see if there's an exploit that exists for it. That's the research, that's the busy work. That just saves some time. But then when you kind of think about that a little more, it's like, oh yeah, but I'm also helping with that balance between thoroughness and speed. So if I'm a pen tester and I say, well, I get lazy and I check 6 of those sites and then I give up, well, I just lost some thoroughness. So for us, we look at it as that time savings, but then we look at it as, hey, can we maximize the amount of thoroughness? And then when you look at it from that perspective, you start asking the question, what is the data that my team needs to know? Where do I need to inform them? And then that's where you say, all right, well, I need to connect to that source so that data goes to the analyst automatically. And that's the augmentation. That's the thoroughness component. Hey, when they're looking at something, they're going to know they've seen it before, or they're going to know it's in this threat repository.
I like it because many of us have written scripts that are like, when I have this piece of data, I want to automate sending it to all these different sites and cross-referencing it, right? But then, one, I got to write the script. 2, I still have to like take my piece of data, usually copy and paste, go to some web interface or a command line, run it through my automated script. You've made it even better than that. Now it's just part of my normal workflow, and I can just right-click on something and do that. And the best part is I don't have to write that code. I'd rather be writing different code, quite frankly.
Maybe,
right?
yeah, maybe, or you take that code, right, that script that you have, maybe you drop that into the integration framework, and that's the second part of that. So what to recognize is the thing you would have pasted into that script, and then the action to take is that script, and then the thing to overlay is the output of that script. And now you have that thing, and you've kind of short-circuited. You're still running that script potentially. CyberChef's a good example. We're still running CyberChef. We're just running it in a way that's embedded and available to you everywhere you go. It's still CyberChef in the back end. It's still that same code.
Can you do it on mobile?
We are working on some web-based stuff where mobile would be more accessible. From a general algorithms perspective, recognize pixels on a screen or a mobile phone camera. We've tested our stuff on that. It turns out that most of our customers are not doing their work on mobile.
So it's not worth your R&D time.
It hasn't been other than a search, right? Like if it's on mobile, it's because they want to look up one thing because they're getting an alert late at night. It's not because that's where they're doing their work.
Yep. I gotcha. And you can run this on all Windows, Mac OS, and Linux?
Windows, Mac, and Linux. Yep. Certain flavors of Linux, but Windows, Mac, and Linux.
It ran great on Ubuntu 2004, by the way.
Ubuntu is a supported distro.
Yes. That's the hard part of creating software for Linux, is all the distros do it differently.
It is. Oftentimes it runs on many distros we don't support, but you're kind of constrained at how many things can we officially support. So usually the folks that are running the distros we don't support are more than willing to
put the time
to
in.
hack it together to make sure they got the libraries. Usually it's just pulling down that. Well, you've been in dependency hell. It's pulling down the things that you need.
I live in dependency hell.
Why is that still a thing? At least it's not the old Red Hat days when you'd ask to install package X and it says, no, you can't install package X. You need package Y. All right, I'll go install package Y. And it says, no, you can't install package Y. You need package X.
I do run into it less and less, though.
Yeah, very rarely. Usually it's like, hey, you need package, you want to install package X, you need package Y. Cool, I install package Y. It says, no, you need package Z. And then package Z says, oh, you need package double X. I'm like, all right, double X, this is Y, Z, done. I can do that. The
one that tripped me up recently, and I compiled OpenVAS from scratch.
I'm so sorry.
Someone created a great guide, and I thanked him on Twitter. Because I was like, thank you saved me so much time. And I did THC, Hydra, Nmap, all went swimming. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do that, right? It was more of kind of an academic kind of exercise, part of our labs testing. The one that got me was Medusa. And that's the one where, like, if you get so old, like, it needs this revision of the library, and that revision just doesn't exist in the repos, so I'd have to go compile that library, and that's when you go down. Then when you compile that library, it may depend on stuff that isn't in the distro. So I think when software gets so old, it's almost not worth the effort.
When you remind me of kind of how I got into security. The
firewall guy got sick.
I was.
That's my story.
I had a paper due for college, and I thought it'd be a good idea to do a stage 1 install of Gentoo Linux. So I printed out the manual.
Wait, when is that ever a good idea?
Yeah, not a good idea, right? So I printed out the manual. I only had one machine, which is another mistake. If you're going to mess with Gentoo back then, at least, you should probably have a couple computers around you.
I think that's so true today.
Yeah. But now they come in virtual flavors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I, bashed my head against the wall until I get it working. I finally get it working. It was awesome. Once it was working, it was like an older laptop, and it screamed just having that everything compiled for the hardware.
It wasn't like, I got it working. Oh wait, now what do I do with it?
Well, other than one, you get it working, and then you're like, well, how do I add a GUI, right? Like, that side of it. But here's where it ties into security. So that was good, just education in Linux. Then a friend said, hey, check this out, and he hands me a CD, and it was Knoppix STD. And I throw that in there, and it's the equivalent of what Kali Backtrack, right?
Yep.
Like back then, and I throw it in, and it was like everything was working. I'm like, why did I do all that other stuff? And then it had all the security tools on it, which then I just started playing.
Good learning experience.
Good learning experience, yeah. But then I had all those security tools that were all of a sudden easy, and it was like instant script kiddie, like mess with stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yep. I tried to install Pentoo once, and I never finished. Sorry, not Pentoo, Gentoo.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Pentoo.
There was a Pentoo.
There still is. There
still is.
Yep. Zero Chaos is the lead maintainer, lead developer for Pentoo.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Still, so I haven't checked it out in a while.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Containers have made that
still a thing.
Containers are really cool for that. And when I first started playing with containers, there wasn't a whole lot of containers for security tools. There's a lot more today. Your mileage is going to vary, but it's super easy way to get stuff running without having to compile into. I mean, I do encourage the youth of today, like you need to experience that. That's how you learn, right? But in a pinch, spinning something up in a container is just sometimes, provided the person who's maintaining that container, because oftentimes it's not the package maintainer or open source.
It's a third party.
It's a third party that's just like, I gotta like check your work, dude. And I'm like, you don't really want to be running that as root, and like he's doing just like bad security things in the container, and I'm like, that's not good. And there is another person I probably should recognize on the show. They maintain the OpenVAS container, so that was the easy way. So I ran OpenVAS with containers, had a pretty easy time. I had to make some slight adjustments, but it was like one shot command and OpenVAS was up and running. I'm like, that's too easy. I need a harder way, to do it. So
my thing with so many of the security tools that I use from day to day, containerization doesn't work that great, because normally in some cases I need access to hardware. And my understanding is that USB will work pretty well sometimes.
I haven't gone down that route.
But every time I've tried to use some tool in like Docker that requires access to the USB, no. Like, we'll use this wireless tool in a container. I'm like,
nope.
Where's my Wi-Fi adapter? Nope. Where's my bus pirate? Nope. Where's my HackerF? Nope. Yeah, give up. Pip install -requirements.txt.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right.
But I was looking at the integration page, and it seems like you've got twice as many integrations as when last we talked. Have you guys been just going to town there, or what?
Yeah, just building away. So it's the nice thing about having a user community and customers where they drive requirements and they build stuff and contribute. There's also been...
Paul, do you maintain that stuff, or do they, or is there kind of a split?
It's a great question. It's kind of a balance. Many of them will maintain. So if we think there's going to be a lot of value across many different customers, then we'll take the lead on making sure and maintaining it. If a customer is doing something more specific to their organization, then they would own that and maintain it. Of course, we're going to support them as needed, but
Right.
they'll have the full ownership over it. And of course, there's many integrations for customers where we don't even see them. We don't even know. Like sometimes we hear this success story of what they built, but for the most part, they're operating on an environment where it's confidential and we don't get to see other than hear about the success.
My advice, and this is totally free because it's probably what it's worth, is
Nickel's worth of free advice.
keep an eye on that, because if people develop modules or extensions and don't keep them up to date, someone will go and use it and have a horrible time and then think you're a jerk because you make crappy software, right? Sneak has a really cool thing. I don't know where I came across it, but it's like an evaluation of a software library or open source product. And they look at the number of commits, the number of contributors, how frequent the updates are, and they kind of generate a score, right? Of like,
Sure.
This is pretty actively maintained software. I'm like, cool, that's the one I want to use. Because oftentimes, you're looking for a solution. And I'm balancing between like, what's the best way to do something versus like the easiest and secure, right? And all of those are factors. And if like Sneak gives it like a horrible score, I'm like, I don't want to go there. Right?
I couldn't even do some of that. Like some of the stuff I'm looking at for doing research or some wireless stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'll go to GitHub and I'll search and I'll see if I can find some code for that. And I'm like, well, I get the one that was updated 7 years ago, or I get the one that's updated 7 years ago.
That's the only one that exists.
Yeah, it's the only one that exists. Or the other one is like not complete or has no documentation or is some piece of C code that doesn't work. I'm like,
Maybe a hack would be to pick the one that when you Google search it, it has the most hits.
I like that.
Because it's the most people talking about it. Maybe the biggest community.
That's usually more actively maintained.
Right?
Yeah, that could be in Sneak's algorithm too.
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been busy building integrations, and we expect that for some of these trainings and upcoming trainings, with each one, call it a constraint on ourselves. We said, all right, well, if we're going to be doing training, this will kind of force us to also have new content, valuable content coming out on a regular basis when it comes to community and providing more and more value as we go forward. So like some upcoming ones that are new integrations since the last time we talked is the Sandbox integration, Sandbox Finder. So this is going to take your file hash, your domain, your IP, and search across the public malware sandboxes. So not your local cuckoo, although you could do something like that if you wanted to. It's going to search across the Joe sandbox, the hybrid analysis, the any.run, the virus total, and provide you access there. And what I like about that integration isn't the kind of traditional. I mean, you're probably going to search by the file hash is probably going to be the most popular search, MD5 or SHA, right? But the other thing you could search by is just a random string. So you could search by maybe the file name, maybe a sequence of bytes, and still get results back. So this could potentially, as an analyst, provide you other samples that are relevant to or the precursors to the one you're dealing with in the moment.
It's really awesome.
So I think that's one of our upcoming training we're doing on sandbox analysis, and then Yara Finder is another one that kind of stumbled upon, and I've seen it as valuable for our customers, which is find the Yara rule that's associated with a given thing. Given thing could be APT 33, or it could be CVE XYZ, or it could be an IP address, or Hafnium, an actor, right? So that's been a new one as well that searches various sources on the internet that we've identified as useful for spotting and finding Yara rule content. And the other awesome benefit of just building these in general is as we get more and more folks in the community edition, they're providing more sources back. So I think Paul, you even gave us one that we added to Exploit Finder. Right? The more users we get, the more they say, hey, you know what? I searched this spot. This is where I find stuff useful. And then we just add it to it. Simple for us to add, and then more value out to that community.
It's awesome.
nice.
You make me want to use it more. It's mission accomplished. It's really great.
Sold.
Thank you. Awesome.
And folks can go to the website and get the community edition, right? I know we had a special version for our listeners at one time, but doesn't matter how they acquire it. You can go there, just create an account.
You can just go to the website polarity.io. It'll ask you a couple questions and create an account for you. And then, if there's any feedback, any integrations you wish were on there, you just email us. So customersuccess@polarity.io. My team's awesome.
And
usually
do you
responsive.
expire accounts? Like if I had an account or one of our listeners had an account months ago, a year ago, is it still?
It's possible that it got inactive, but we'll stand you back up.
So just email the
email. There's usually a password reset link as well. So if you just forgot your password, did the password reset link, or email us, or just sign up again, and it'll create a new account. So there's not. If you logged in, we probably didn't expire. The accounts that might have expired would have been if you signed up and then never logged in.
I got you.
Okay. Those would have been the ones that would have been expired. But if you actually got in and configured stuff, it shouldn't have expired. Just reset your password or log in.
Awesome. Nice. I remembered my password. It's in LastPass somewhere.
That's all you need to know. It's in LastPass.
Awesome. So folks can still visit securityweekly.com/polarity. The link is still live. Go check it out. Get the community edition. And I guarantee you're going to use that and be like, yeah, I might want the enterprise version. Because that's after when you came on the last time, I was like, yeah, we need to get that. We're still working on it, but it's on my list. It's on my list. It's awesome stuff, Paul.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And hopefully you get value out of community too. But yeah, always happy to get folks on enterprise. Either one, we're happy.
Awesome. With that, we will take a short break and come back with our next interview. Stay tuned. When it comes to web app and API security, the choice is simple. You can choose Fastly's security solution that teams will actually use in full blocking mode, just like When it comes to web app and API security, the choice is simple. You can choose Fastly's security solution that teams will actually use in full blocking mode, just like 90% of their customers. Or you can stick with costly options that you probably just turn off. You can get Fastly's all-in-one platform that protects apps everywhere they live, however they're built. Or departments can agree to disagree. You can go to securityweekly.com/Fastly to learn more. Or you can just wish you had. Can you pinpoint the 10 security gaps in your attack surface that account for 90% of your risk? It's impossible using a combination of scanners, pen tests, breach and attack simulation tools, and manual processes. But attackers can find your gaps. They perform recon and target the weaknesses with the best return. The Cycognito platform sees your external attack surface the way attackers do, eliminating blind spots. Powered by a global bot network, the Cycognito platform prioritizes your highest risk security gaps, integrates with existing workflows, and reduces operational costs. Visit securityweekly.com/Cycognito. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. We're back. I have a new chair because the old one broke. Unfortunately, not on air, so everyone could see it. But we are more than happy to announce that we will be at InfoSec World 2021 in person, October 25th through the 27th in 2021. This year, our annual partnership with InfoSec World is extra special, as we are both part of the Cyber Risk Alliance. What does that mean for Security Weekly listeners and InfoSec World attendees? Well, you get to see and hear from many of us at Security Weekly and save 20% off your World's Pass. Please visit securityweekly.com/ISW2021 to register using our discount code. Joff Fire has joined us from the host side. Joff, welcome. Nice to have you.
Hello. It's good to be here. I am obviously very glad to be here on a Thursday night because we love doing this.
It's a lot of fun. Here to join in the festivities is Rick Howard, the CISO at The CyberWire, a cybersecurity podcast network, a former commander of the U.S. Army's Computer Emergency Response Team, and founder of the Cyber Threat Alliance. He joins us today to talk about the Cybersecurity Canon, a rock and roll hall of fame for cybersecurity books. Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on this late Thursday night. I really appreciate it.
Rick, it is nice to have you on, my friend. I am so excited about this segment.
Is that what that smell is?
I do. I've listened to many of the books on this, and I hope we can dig into maybe some of them. Have you read all of these, Rick?
I've read most of them. Okay,
yeah.
So we can have a long discussion about that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so before we get too far, maybe we should share that list. With our listeners. It's
in the show notes.
Okay. So https://icdt.osu.edu/cybercanon, CANON, right?
Yes. And Rick, I guess I want to start off a little bit about how this project was created.
Yeah, well, I'm first of all, I'm a big reader, okay, and I am chagrined that most of our peers don't do a lot of reading. I'm glad to hear that you're a big consumer of cybersecurity books.
I listen though, Rick. Is that cheap?
No.
I know some people poke fun at me for that, but
No, it totally counts. I listen to Audible all the time. If you want to get through a lot of material, that is the way to do it. In fact, I went through the Harry Potter series last summer.
Nice.
That's 7 books, all right? One actor, one reader, and he did 35 different voices. It was fabulous.
Oh my god!
Oh yeah, amazing.
Audible counts, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so I was
So Rick, how did you create? I mean, is there like a panel of people? Like, how did this get created?
Yeah, it started because what I really love about the cybersecurity industry, okay, is that it's changing all the time, right? There's all kinds of new stuff. There's always some new bad guy doing really horrible things, but kind of cool, okay? But really horrible things. And there's always some white hat trying to counter it. And so that's what I love about this job. It changes all the time. What I hate about the job is that it changes all the time, right?
Yeah.
And we struggle to keep up with everything. And what most of us do is read and listen to lots of cybersecurity stuff. And I realized about 7 years ago that there were a bunch of books that were published, but nobody really knew much about them. So what we did is we started up this project called the Cybersecurity Canon Project. That's canon with one N, as in canon of literature, not two N's where you blow stuff up. All right. And so we set it up like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We have outside practitioners. These are CISOs. These are red teamers. These are blue teamers. They're lawyers. They're anybody that's interested in the craft. They read the books and they write reviews of them. All right. And they put them into one of three categories. The first category is this is a Hall of Fame book. Everybody should read it by now. If you haven't, you have a big hole in your cybersecurity education. The second category is, okay, maybe not a Hall of Fame book, but if you are interested in the topic, it's a pretty good niche book and it's worth reading. But the third category and the service we give back to the community is do not read. Right, because there are lots of crap cybersecurity books out there, and if you're going to spend time reading a book this year, maybe you don't want to pick a bad one, right? And so we do the work for you, so you don't have to. So we've been doing it now for about 7 years. There's about 40 books in the Hall of Fame. So if you're looking to start reading, go to the website that you guys mentioned at the top of the show and start with the Hall of Famers. And then once you get through that, you can work your way through the candidate lists. And then go from there. All right. So that's how it got started.
That's really awesome. What's your favorite book on the list, Rick?
I love that question. Okay. My favorite cybersecurity nonfiction book. We're going to talk about fiction too, because that's the fun part. Right?
Yeah.
But,
right. And then Rick, that was going to be one of my questions. Like I was reading through this and I'm like, oh, looks like technical book. And I get down to the bottom and there's like Stieg Larsson and the girl with the dragon tattoo. And I'm like, oh, there's fiction here too. Cause awesome.
Yeah. Well, let me come back to that. All right.
For sure.
My favorite book of all time, okay, is Dr. Clifford Stoll's Cuckoo's Egg. Have you guys read Cuckoo's Egg yet?
Yep. Cover to cover, probably maybe even before I really truly got into cybersecurity. It was one of the books that piqued my, like many.
I listened to it on audiobook this winter.
Is that right?
Yep.
It is what you said is what happened to a lot of people back in the early days. It's an old book. It came out in the late 80s. And it actually was published when I was in grad school, when I was supposed to be doing my thesis. I decided to read that instead because it was much more fun. All right. And it's a pretty easy book to read. It's you can get through it in a weekend. And back in those days, authors put their email addresses in the books because, email was just, new. This is, like I said, late 80s. And so I got done and I sent Dr. Stoll a very gushing appraisal of his book, and he answered me in 15 minutes, right? So ever since then I've been a fan. All right, so can I just describe the book because I just love it. All right,
yeah, please do.
So Dr. Stoll was is an astronomer, and he was working at Lawrence Livermore Labs, but they were downsizing his department. And Dr. Stoll is how do I describe him? He's a lefty liberal. Right. And so if you think about, there's the right, there's the middle, there's the left, and there's a little bit on the extreme. He's way over there on the left side. Right. He makes his own clothes. He's got long hair. He's got tattoos. He's got earrings. He gardens his own food. He makes his own shoes. He's that guy.
And Rick, the story goes, because I've read a couple of books that go into the backstory behind that book and those events, is that there's two Lawrence Berkeley Labs. One is more academic and one is more defense contractor. And I'm going to get the name screwed up. And he didn't want to work for the one that was defense contractor because of his political.
Yeah, because he hates the man, right? Yeah. He hates the man, right? And so, but he's getting ready to get laid off. But everybody likes him because he's funny, he's charming, he's got a great sense of humor. And so the IT department for the academic side, they say, hey, Cliff, come work for us. We need someone to run this Unix lab. Right,
in support of the astronomers, like
yes,
match made in heaven, right?
Yeah, right. And then in a year, your job will come back open. They'll start hiring guys. You can go back to being an astronomer, but in the meantime, you can help us out. Oh, and by the way, there's a 75-cent accounting error in the student database records, because back then we charged students for computer time. So in all of the student body, every month it was off by 75 cents, and nobody could figure out why. So Cliff, come work for us, run the Unix lab, track down this 75-cent accounting error. You'll be a hero to us, and you get your job back, in a year. That 75-cent accounting error was the first evidence of a public cyber espionage attack run by the Russians using East German hacker mercenaries to break into U.S. academic institutions so they can break into government institutions, because back then there wasn't any security. It was all just strings and cans, right? Mm-hmm. So Cliff, while he does this, he treats this like an experiment. He has hypotheses, he has data collection, he tests his hypotheses, and he logs everything. He
has a pager, right? Is a pager.
He has a pager, right? And he pretty much invents incident response, okay, back in the late 80s. The way we do it now is pretty much the way he laid it out, back then. So that's one reason you'd like to read it. But what's really fun about the book is here's this guy, this lefty liberal, who hates the man.
Yep.
But as he's tracking down these bad guys, he's got to talk to the FBI and the NSA and the CIA, and so that's fun to watch. There's a love story in it, okay, that's fabulous, all right? And there is even a chocolate chip cookie recipe in the back of the original book that I have tried, right? So it's just fabulous. So I hand that book to any newbie that comes up to me and says, "What should I read?" Read that book. Okay, you
Rick,
read it.
have you read Cyberpunk: Outlaws and Hackers on the Computer Frontier by Katie Hafner and John Markoff?
I have not read that. It's on my list, but I keep pushing it. So tell me why I should read that one.
If you loved The Cuckoo's Egg, you are going to love this book, because it goes into the book is broken up into 3 sections: one on Kevin Mitnick, one on the German hackers that were loosely affiliated with the Chaos Communication Congress, right? But they were on the other side of Clifford Stoll. And it goes into depth into their story, and then at the end, it goes into.
Really? I've never heard of that before. That's fabulous.
Yeah. So, I have a whole new perspective, appreciation of the story of Clifford Stoll, because now I've read the other side of it. And this book, I don't know, it was published a long time ago.
So let's put it this way, Paul. I read this book in paperback and still have it when I was in high school in 1991.
Cyberpunk?
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the last chapter is Robert Tappan Morris.
Yes.
In all of what I thought was really interesting, to delve into history, got me really excited, all their stories intertwine very gently, but all their stories intertwine together.
And I think that was part of the magic of that book, was that they all intertwined.
Well, he has an appendix. Stoll has an appendix at the end of the original book that talks about the Morris worm, right? And I was in grad school when that Morris worm hit. I was going to a government grad school, right? So, yeah, we experienced it full up. So, yeah, you're right. It overlapped, and total immersion experience.
So I won't ruin the story of Cyberpunk for you, but there was a lot of you should contact me after you read it. We'll have a chat.
I love it. I'll come back on and we'll discuss it. Right? Yeah, it's great.
It's really cool. Marcus Hess was the hacker that was breaking into Stoll's systems.
And of course, now I got to go back and read that book. I mean, it's literally been 30 years since I've read that book.
I can't believe nobody's told me about that. I hawked this book. I've been hawking this book for 20 years. No one mentioned the other side of the story. I'm glad you did. Thank you for that.
It is fascinating. I won't spoil it for you, because there was stuff in there I'm like, I didn't know all the stuff was going on, because I also think, Rick, a lot of the books, ones on this list and others, are a very US centric view of hacking, and there was some awesome hacking going on in Germany and a lot of other countries that just didn't make the translation. Basically,
one of the lessons there was understand the adversary. Don't boot them out right away, right? Like, if you knee-jerk reaction and pull the plug, they might just be back. So, hey, let's learn a little bit before you pull the plug.
Well, I think that was what Cliff did. I mean, he
jingled the keys.
He figured out how to watch them and to figure out what they were doing, because he had really no idea when he started, right? So, he totally subscribes to that whole thesis.
And that is a great reference, Paul. Jingle the keys.
That's one of my favorite parts of the whole book, is when he's jingling the keys over the phone lines. Yeah.
Yep. Jingle the keys.
It's awesome.
Make a little noise.
Yep.
And he also learned how to keep the hacker on. I mean, creating basically a honeypot before honeypots were a thing.
Yep.
What did he call it? He called it SDI net. It was a whole bunch of
yes. He
documents
created fake information.
Yeah, that wasn't really a thing back then, and he just went to town. By the way, if you ever get a chance to hear Cliff, he's a hoot.
He's
He
a
came and
character.
talked with Lawrence Livermore for at least an hour back in the early '90s, and that was the most fun. I've got a video somewhere of it.
Hang on, my dog wants to contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, they always
no
do.
worries.
Welcome to 2020 and 2021 with working from home. We were talking with somebody on the phone today at work, and they're like, "Sorry for my dog." I'm like, "Whatever." This is the new don't mind my cat either. It's fine. I literally talked. I dot Farsans last week, and I on video the whole time, and I said I will apologize right now if my cat comes and one of my cats comes and bothers me, and I put the camera and moved it so they could see the cat sleeping in the chair behind me, and I'm like, she's usually annoying, and middle of the day I said, oh my God, here she comes, and she walks up, rubs on the camera, turns back around, and goes back over to the chair and goes to sleep for another 4 hours. I'm like, okay, good.
Rick, I'd have to say, and I know Joff will agree with me here, that Countdown to Zero Day by Kim Zetter quite arguably is one of the best books. I would venture to say it is the best book on a malware kind of attack. I mean, Sandworm's probably a close second, but I'd give that edge to Countdown to Zero Day for sure.
I would too, and it's an early Hall of Fame winner. Okay, she came out to the ceremony, and we handed her the award, and it's fat. So I've known Kim for a long time now. Yeah, it is the reason you read books.
Yeah,
because when Stuxnet happened, and we should just say Countdown to Zero Day is about the U.S.-Israeli attacks against the Iranian nuclear production plant in Natanz. Right.
And thank you, because I can never remember the damn covers for these books because I listen to them on Audible and I'm not looking at the cover.
Yeah.
So, but we were all immersed in that when it was happening, but we'd read one news story and then another news story, and then 4 weeks later we hear another one.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree
more. We
more.
never got the complete story.
Yep.
So we get somebody like Kim.
That's the complete story.
Complete story, right? Yeah. And man, that's the way to do it. So that's the mold.
Yeah.
Okay, of the books that we want to have in the Cybersecurity Canon Hall of Fame. And I would say there's a couple more that fit that mold if we're just talking about nation state operations. The other one I really like is Sanger's Perfect Weapon.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I read that one too.
So that is, it goes from 2010 to modern day. And he talks about how, when I started doing this business, you guys are old, some of you old timers also, right? But we used to think there was going to be a cyber war, there was going to be only cyber forces on each side, and we'd be launching cyber bombs at each other. And, that was early 2000s, and, we didn't know what we were talking about. Okay. Mm-hmm. What has emerged is this thing called a continuous low-level cyber conflict.
Yes.
Where nation states do everything they can in cyberspace that's just short of war, right? And it's a lot of stuff they can do. And the nation states that are really good at that is what Sanger talks about in his book. And it's all the usual suspects, the U.S., North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia, right? And he covers every major event that's happened in the last 10 years. So if you want to get up to speed, that's a fabulous, fabulous book.
Agreed. I have an affinity towards Kingpin by Kevin Poulsen, the story around Max Butler, aka Max Vision.
I love the Max Butler story. All right, I mean,
I get to the end of that book, and I won't spoil it, but I like Max. I have a new appreciation for him, and I don't look at him as a villain as much. I think before I read the book, the other thing that book did for me, Rick, was a whole new appreciation for PCI, because that chronicles how people were making money hand over fist with credit card fraud. And I was like, wow, PCI really, really did help. And that book, I think, did it for me. How about you?
You know what the takeaway I got from that book was how hard it is to make money with this. The hacking part is the easy part.
Right.
to take credit card information, make fake credit cards, and go buy stuff on, and then sell that stuff. That's an 80-hour-a-week job. That's a job I didn't want. Right.
The laundering part was the hard part, right? It wasn't the hacks. The hacks.
The hacking part was easy, right? Yeah, comparatively, right.
And I'm looking through this list, and like I came across one the book is 10 years old. Read Me by Neil Stephenson.
Yeah,
I have not read that one, and I'm reading through the review a little bit, and I'm like, oh yeah, so I've reviewed Snow Crash and Cryptonomicon,
Yep.
and what was the other one that was mentioned in there? The Baroque Cycle.
The Baroque Cycle, yeah.
I'm like, I've read all of those. Like, the Baroque Cycle was part of the reason why I wanted to get a 3D printer.
Well, let's talk about that, because we do write reviews about novels, all right? And there's a reason for that, because I want to be able to hand a book to my grandma where the cyber stuff in it is realistic. It's not, the other kind of cyber book is, I call them Harry Potter cyber novels, where the bad guy gets behind the keyboard and says, okay, I'm in because I did some magic, right? I don't want to read those books. I want to be able to read books where the cyber is real. And my favorite cyber novel of all time is Cryptonomicon, right?
Yeah.
That, I love that book, right? I just love it.
Oh my word. That took forever to get through.
Oh yeah, it's dense. Okay?
But and at the end, I was like, just speechless. Like,
yeah. I mean, he covers everything. Okay, from Alan Turing breaking codes in World War II to finding gold in the modern era to all kinds of hacking
Tempest
things.
And
And by the way, what is the right ratio between Captain Crunch and milk to make it just perfect? Right. So
that's important.
So the author is Neil Stephenson. Yep. He is a Lifetime Achievement Award winner for the Cybersecurity Canon. He's everybody that's ever written a review on the committee loves all his books. So Cryptonomicon I highly recommend it, but that is not a book you're going to get through in a weekend. That's a dense story, right?
1,000 pages.
Yeah.
Roughly. So
if you want a lighter version of what Stephenson can do, Remedy, what you were mentioning before, okay, is fabulous, right? It's Russian cybercrime. It's gamers in China. It's one of the main characters owns a World of Warcraft like game. Stevenson invents cryptocurrency in that game. This is years before Bitcoin became a thing, right? So yeah. I think you will love it if you're looking for novels to read.
Switching back to nonfiction just for a moment, we can certainly jump around. Throughout my career, I've made so many wonderful friends, and some of my friends talked about this place called The Pit in the NSA. It told me all kinds of stories about The Pit. And then I was listening to Dark Territory by Fred Kaplan, and I'm like, holy crap, this is like the first time I've ever heard of a work outside of talking to my friends mention The Pit, because it was not like a thing that people really wanted to talk about or write about. And I like instantly messaged my friend, Jeff Mann. I'm like, dude, he's like, yeah, dude, we know. We all had that reaction like years ago, like, you're late to the party, man.
But thanks for joining. Okay, here's your party hat. Okay,
but that's an awesome book. Other than the Pit stuff, just the research he did is amazing.
So yeah, what was the site? Oh, Kingpin. You mentioned Kingpin.
Yes.
We need to encourage authors to write more books about cybercrime. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
There isn't enough, right? The Kingpin's probably the latest, and it was good, but we need more. All right. So as you talk to people out there, please encourage them to do so.
Yep. Yeah, you're looking at this list, and I see a book on here that like I didn't expect, and kind of grabs me, and it's called Offensive Countermeasures and the Art of Active Defense by John Strand and Paul Asadorian.
Yeah, see, when you get really good at web hacking, you can hack the site and put your own book in there.
I thought that was I thought that was on the do not read list. So, like, hey, you know what? The links is WRT. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
But that was kind of cool to see. But that said,
book there?
That said, I also don't see I'm not finding it easy, the do not read list.
Well, I will just say it's a volunteer organization, okay, and we may need some help making the website better, okay? I founded this when I was working for Palo Alto Networks, all right, and then when I left that company, we transferred it over to Ohio State University. So the web team is a bunch of volunteer interns there. So yes, that's on the list to make it easier to find. The books do not read, so I apologize for that.
That's okay.
But the thing I need to mention though is these aren't just book covers. If you click the book cover, you can read the review. So you can decide if you want to read the book yourself by reading what the reviewer said. So keep that in mind as you go to that site.
Awesome. I think one of the other books that changed my life kind of thing is the Phoenix Project. I talked a lot about it on the show, and I really want to encourage people not just to read that, but also listen to the Behind the Phoenix Project, or Behind the, I think is what they called it. There's like an audio book, and it's kind of like a podcast series with Gene Kim and the other guy.
Yep.
The other DevOps guy. Yeah. You know who I'm talking about, right?
I'm drawing a blank. Yes.
I'm drawing a blank on it too.
I got to double down on that though, Paul. I couldn't agree more. The Phoenix Project is a must read. I think too many of us in the information security profession lose touch with what we're actually doing, what the mission is, and the Phoenix Project will bring you right back to what the mission is.
I tell you what, the culture here at Security Weekly and now Cyber Risk Alliance and that I try and instill are lessons from the Phoenix Project, and not just for security, but all operations. It's amazing how you can. I mean, the premise of the Phoenix Project drew from Goldrat's The Goal, that he drew from lean manufacturing, and Gene mirrored that exactly. The characters in the book, it's kind of a parallel story, but also they did a Behind the Goal, and he did a Behind the Phoenix Project. Then, of course, followed that up with the Unicorn Project, which was equally as awesome. And I take lessons from that, and that is how we do operations today, because it's simply amazing.
There's a interesting way to teach, right? To take a human narrative and play it back into the lessons that you want to teach along the way. I wonder if you could do a human narrative like that and teach cybersecurity.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, let's be clear. I don't know. Maybe not all the listeners understood what we're talking about. Gene Kim is a great storyteller, and instead of writing a nonfiction book about DevOps, he writes a novel about a typical IT organization. I'm sure, as you guys were talking about it, you saw yourself in some of those characters as he was rolling through that story, right? And what I love about the Phoenix Project is, if you're trying to understand the philosophy of DevOps, that is the perfect book to read. And another book you can get through in a weekend, right? So but if you're more technically bent, the companion book I always recommend from the Hall of Fame also is it was written by the Google team, called Site Reliability Engineering.
Yes.
Right. And so if you understand the philosophy from Gene Kim's book,
the Google book is the application.
Yeah, it's the how-to manual. Okay, This is how Google did it, right? And I love the story about Google, right? When they were just a search engine, when they weren't as big as they used to be, the leadership of the company made this amazing decision, right? They decided to give the management of the network not to the typical network management team or IT team that all of us had. They gave it to the developers, right? And so when you give that responsibility to a bunch of coders, what do? They automate everything. They're automating their entire infrastructure. This is 6 years before we even had a name of DevOps, right? And so it is the seed that make Google grow into the giant Silicon Valley company that they are today, right? So
without a doubt,
Site Reliability Engineering is the how-to manual for getting this stuff done.
Who was the author on that? I want to say I've interviewed one of the authors. Now I lost it.
There's 4 of them, okay, and they're all Google people. And Betsy Beyer, she's a famous one, and Petrov. I'm going to have to pull up a browser and look up all this stuff, aren't I? Okay.
He's going to have to use Google.
They're going to be, yeah. They're going to be mad at me that I don't remember everybody's names. Okay, I should know this stuff.
Use Google to go. Hey, I want to make one more comment though about the Phoenix Project, really quick. If what comes to mind for me about the Phoenix Project is if anybody in the consulting world or anybody in our industry is considering taking on a chief information security officer position, that would be the book to give them. To say, look, go read this, because the best thing you can do in your new position as a chief information security officer is go learn the business. Don't make any assumptions, just go learn the business.
Right. My entire life is wrapped up in that book. I see it everywhere, right? And when they talk about technical debt, right, and my entire career has been trying to make things better at places where we still spent all of our time on the previous guy's work, right? Because we just couldn't get out of our own way. All that we had to keep reacting to things that broke and things that weren't working correctly instead of innovating for the company and moving it forward. So DevOps is the ticket, all right, to get rid of all that technical debt. And you're right. This is the book to get you started.
How did you all feel about the representation of the security professional in that book? Was it was it too cliche or was it spot on?
Yes.
It's pretty cliche.
Yes.
But spot on too.
Yeah, it's a yes and a yes, right?
Yeah, I saw myself, okay, in that character.
A lot of introspection, yeah.
I want to recommend a book to all of you that it just got put into the Hall of Fame just this last month. The committee announced the books for this season. And my favorite one from that list is a book called Code Girls by Liza Munday. Okay, and it's about the code breaking efforts during World War II here on the American side. We're all familiar with what Turing did at Bletchley Park and all that entire effort. Okay, and that's been pretty well documented. But I didn't really understand the amount of effort that went in on the American side to break the Japanese codes. And what's amazing about it is the men got all the credit for it. Okay, there were like 2 or 3 guys that were the leaders, but there were 10,000 women in Washington, D.C. that were doing the day-to-day backbreaking, code-breaking efforts that led to breaking the codes that allowed us to win the Battle of Midway, that allowed us to figure out where General Yamamoto was so we could shoot him down and get him out of the war, right? And those kinds of things, right? And so what I really love about that book is that, we in our industry have been talking about how do we get women into our industry. It proved that we don't have to get women into the industry. They've been here since the very beginning, okay, helping the country, learning how to do this kind of cybersecurity stuff. So I highly recommend that book to all your listeners.
I just bought it on Audible because we listen to audiobooks in the car with the family. I have one that I listen to by myself, and I have one that we listen to as a family. We're currently doing Ready Player 2. My wife and my 2 daughters.
How is Ready Player 2? Is it as good as Ready Player 1?
We're still relatively early on in the book. It's good. It's about what you expect. It's about it's effectively a replay of Ready Player 1 with some different scenarios and stuff. That said, it's good because of those exact type of things. But so my wife, our 7-year-old, and our 13-year-old, and some of the language is a little rough for the 7-year-old, but okay, it's fine. So this one I think is going to be really great.
She's got you as a father.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think this will be a great listen for this summer when Ready Player 2 is over. So great stuff.
I want to recommend one more from this year's list that I highly recommend. It's Like War by Singer and Emerson. All right, these guys have crafted a history of influence operations, not only in nation-state activity, but also in our culture. All right, and have outlined how we got to where we are today, where most of us can't even believe the truth that's out there these days, right? But what I really like about it, after they explain it all, right, is that they offer some real solutions that we could use going forward. Solutions that other nations have used and are resilient to this kind of influence operation. And so please take a look at that one. I think all of us need to have the skills to look for those influence operations and not react to it the way we have been doing in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and so Rick, you said by Singer and Emerson. How do you spell that?
Yeah.
Emerson. Okay.
Yeah.
Emerson T. Brooking.
It's one of those things that I did like
I am totally making notes right now.
John, there's a web page that has all these listed on it, and it's in the.
I don't think we've mentioned ones that haven't been on the list. I have a couple, Rick. I'm curious to get your take on it. Hackers, Heroes of the Computer Revolution by Stephen Levy, one of my favorite books.
It has been reviewed, okay, but it didn't make it into the Hall of Fame. So let me tell you how this works.
Yeah, please do.
So the books, they get nominated by one of the committee members. These are the folks that read the book and write the review and make their recommendation on whether it should be in the Hall of Fame or not. And then once a year, the committee gets together and discusses and debates and yells at each other about which book should make it. And those get put into the Canon Hall of Fame. But those books that were nominated stay on the list for 5 years, right? Okay. Just like the baseball, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like the Baseball Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And then if they don't make it in 5 years, then they get put into a special category, right?
Gotcha.
So Levy's book didn't. It's always been close, but never made it. Never made it in. Yeah.
And that said, they will always be considered a nominee.
Sure. Yeah, and books you should read. Okay. But yeah.
So tell me about how come some of them have 2 reviews.
Because we wanted to encourage debate with committee members. So it's one thing if Rick says this book is good, but if Rick and Joe disagree, that's another bullet we can add to whether or not it should be in the canon or not. All right. So we like it when other people review the books. And in fact, we've been encouraging teachers to let their students review the books as kind of an extra credit thing, right? So we'd love to publish those on the webpage too.
And one sort of question that I've got, maybe a little self-serving, and I'll kind of ask the question on Paul's behalf as well, just knowing that we know lots of folks that are consumers of this exact same content. How does one get to be a member of the committee?
Just ask.
Hey, can I be a member of the committee?
Yes, we're always looking for people. Let me tell you the requirements, okay? Yeah. So maybe you won't be...
might not be so eager after you hear this part.
No audiobooks.
No, you can... Audiobooks count. Right? Yep. So you have to read 2 books a year, and you have to write a book review that makes the case what I said at the beginning. Is it a Hall of Fame book? Is it a niche book? Or is it a do not read book? There are monthly meetings, okay, there's committees because we're trying to make everything better. Mm-hmm. And then and we have the one meeting where we vote every year, right? And so that's the requirement. So if you were willing to do all that, please come join us. We would glad to have you, right? And by the way, we could sure use a more technical crowd, all right? Most of the folks that we've had on the committee so far have been pretty high level. Okay. It's been a while since they were an engineer. Okay. So we'd love to have some techies in there reviewing technical books. But here's the thing. The criteria to make it into the Hall of Fame is the book needs to be evergreen, right? So like, there won't be a book on NT security in the Hall of Fame because, Hey, all right. So our, one of the flaws in our system is a technical book that was good this year probably won't be as good 5 years from now, right? So,
fair enough. So I'll be reaching out after the show.
Absolutely. Okay.
So Larry, maybe we should challenge each other. Maybe we should challenge each other, Larry, and do this together. That'd be crazy.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
Rick, there's a couple of books I'm curious to see where they are in respects to this project. I really liked Masters of Deception, The Gang That Ruled Cyberspace. Mm-hmm. That was on the MOD Masters of Deception hacking group out of New York.
Yep. So here's our problem. I don't have enough reviewers. Okay. Yeah. So if you see a book that you would like to be put on the list, we will take a review from anybody. Right. It doesn't have to be a committee member. All right. And we'll put it in the list as we vote for books at the end of the year. And it goes through the same criteria that all the other books have gone through. And so if you see a giant hole in our canon, it's supposed to be the canon of cybersecurity professionals. So if we're missing a book that you think should be there, please submit a review or get someone to write a review, and we will get it on the list for consideration.
It's awesome. I also really liked The Hacker Crackdown, Law and Disorder on the Electronic Frontier by Bruce Sterling.
I like that one too, right? And it's been on my list to write the review for that. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
The one I would add, unless it's on here and I'm just missing it, is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I feel like every cybersecurity professional should read that book on cognitive biases.
Yeah, there's a whole list of books that you wouldn't typically call a cybersecurity book that we want on there. And Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow is one of our committee members is reading that this year. So hopefully we'll see it on the list.
Awesome. I also, Damon by Daniel Suarez holds a special place in my heart. Before Daniel was very widely known as he is today, he graciously came on our show.
I know, and I missed every one.
I know.
And I was the one that introduced you guys to him.
Such an awesome book.
That is an awesome book, okay? And that one is on the list, okay? So
all of his books, cybersecurity related or otherwise, are awesome.
Yes. That was his first. That was his first book.
It was.
That was his first one. Yeah. I keep waiting for the movie to come out. There was some rumor that they were going to be a movie, and I think it kind of fell short. But
that happens.
It's going to make an awesome movie.
Rick, what I found in reading a lot of these books and interviewing a lot of the authors from these books is that a lot of them are put forward as screenplays, and very few of them make it to actually having a movie made.
Yeah, I think you're right about
somebody
that,
did buy the rights to make the movie of it, and it just never went anywhere. And I think about the suspense and what they could do with making that action, that would make a great movie.
That hits all of my joy centers, okay? Because there's hacking involved, there's gaming. The bad guy recruits his evil army through a World of Warcraft like game, right? He gives them special missions in the game to find the right talents. And as he cultivates them, he starts to give them missions in the real world to see if they're any good, right? And so how cool is that? What a fantastic idea for recruitment.
Cyber remote controlled AI motorcycles, what's not to
with
love?
machetes.
Yeah,
with
what's
machetes.
Not to love?
Yeah, come on.
Drones following behind it.
Yeah,
I'm totally in.
If Ready Player One could be made into a movie, they could make Damon into a movie too.
Damn straight. Damn straight.
Yep.
So you mentioned students writing reviews. Are they? You're just talking about OSU, or is it wider than that?
It hasn't really caught on. When I talk to university teachers, I always encourage them, and they all say, "Yeah, we're going to do it," but I never see any. So anybody listening to this show, okay, that's an absolutely thing. We will take student reviews.
Where's Doug White when you need him?
I was going to say, where's Dr. Doug when we need him?
There's Rick, certain hacker groups that I think are pretty quintessential to the hacker culture canon, as it were. And you've got one of them as a winner, Cult of the Dead Cow by Joseph Menn, which was really good. You've got the Masters of Deception book. There's really not one book focused on the Legion of Doom. It's mentioned. Their members are mentioned in several.
It's mentioned a couple of times.
Right, several other works, but there's nothing really dedicated to just that group, and perhaps some other hacker groups as too. And I think it's a missed opportunity for those that want to write a book, right?
Dude, you should write a book.
Well, I don't know if you guys have been following the trend, though. You're podcasters. I'm a podcaster. I've been listening to podcasts forever. And we mentioned Audible books, before, right? What I'm seeing is the whole industry is merging, right? That the books are the books that we're listening to are turning into podcasts. I just listened to Malcolm Gladwell's the Bomber Mafia.
Yep.
And it's a fantastic story, but it's really a very long podcast, right? And if you like Malcolm Gladwell, you will love it. And I'm thinking that the whole entire publishing industry is going to get turned on its ear, as all of us can create our own audiobooks at home these days, right? So you're not going to need to go to some big publishing house to get published. So if that's what's stopping you, I think you should look forward and try to find a new way to publish your stuff.
Rick, I think we're all podcasters here, right? And I think we'd be remiss to not mention Jack Rhysider's Darknet Diaries, where each episode's kind of like a mini book, right? Like it's a short story. Yeah. And also Malicious Life with Rand Levy is also, they're both very similar in that vein.
Yep.
And there's a number of podcasts that are just one season serials that they just take one event and kind of roll it out just like a book, but it's not a repeating show. So yeah, I see the whole industry merging into something completely different.
Yep. Now that said, sure, you can record your own audiobook at home. The other one is, if you're going to do that, be careful. I have listened. So not only do I like the computer security and those types of books, I'm also a huge fan of like zombie and end of the world type scenarios.
Sure. Yeah.
And there was one series that I started to listen to, and I got about 30 minutes in and I had to put it away and save it for another day because it literally sounded like the guy who was recording it for Audible was in his garage. At one point, I think I heard him stand up and like the metal chair scrape across the cement floor, that sound. And I'm like, I should not, not now.
Well, I think you make a good point. In the early days when we were reading books on tape, you guys old enough to remember that?
Yep.
Audio, cassette tapes.
And when you get them from the library, you could put them on your dual cassette deck.
I
remember those days.
I read about that.
I heard about that on.
Back in those days, the authors thought it was a good idea to read their own books, and most of them have no talent for reading, right? So I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and he can't read his own books. They sound awful when he reads them, right? And the big trend is to get actors to read the books now, right?
Yes.
And both fiction and nonfiction. And they're so much better, with somebody who knows how to act, right?
Some of them are like a full production. Like Audible actually has an Audible original called Freaks, and I started listening to it, and then I transitioned to something else. I'm going to come back to it.
PH Freaks, right?
PH Freaks, and there's a full cast, and it's read like a movie,
like a play,
like a radio show, right?
Yeah, like an old school radio show. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but like you think about bringing some of those actors in, like Ready Player One and Ready Player Two, read by Will Wheaton.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yep.
Right.
I listened to, like I said, I was a Stephen King fan. I listened to The Mist. And The Mist is a really scary book, great movie, right? But it was done as an audio play with music and sound effects, and I was on Neighborhood Watch in my neighborhood, and I decided to listen to it while I was driving around like at 2:00 in the morning. That was a mistake.
Big mistake. Yeah, because when you add the sound effects in, because the Freaks book, it's that sound effect. Yeah, it's
been there, done that. That was a huge mistake.
Yeah, that was a mistake. Don't do that.
That's when you got to lower the quality of your headphones, so you can tell the difference between reality and the story.
Now, I mean, Rick, to that point, I mean, we're kind of right on the line flirting with it. I mean, do we create a movie canon, or are there just not enough movies to really have that?
No, I think there is, but we just don't have the bandwidth to get it all done, right? I think there's a movie canon, and I also think there's a
TV show canon.
Yeah, I think there's also a paper canon. Papers that have changed the world, like the Intrusion Kill Chain paper by Lockheed Martin, or the Buffer Overflow paper from the 90s.
And the Bastard Operator from Hell stories.
Yeah, all of that. I think there is we just didn't have the bandwidth for it, so it may be at some point.
Rick, what are your favorite hacker movies? Since we're talking canon.
We actually did a survey for all the hacker community about which movies they thought were their gateway drug, what got them into hacking, right? And it depends on how old you are.
Yep.
Right. So for me, my generation, I'm an old white guy. All right. The movie that got us all interested was
War Games.
War Games. Yeah, absolutely. Right. The next generation past us was Hackers. with Angelique. Jolie.
Yeah, I think Sneakers kind of plays in there in kind of the middle genre.
Yeah, Sneakers is my number 2. Okay, yeah. very close number 2. All right.
I think Tron plays in there too. Mm-hmm. Not straight hacker kind of movie, but certainly the original Tron, right?
Yep. And we talk about that too, Paul. I do a lot of maker culture type of stuff in addition to what I do for my day job, and sometimes they intersect. For me, we've talked about this Unsung Hero with the Manhattan Project. Mm-hmm. That was a movie that really got me into the maker culture type of thing.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And not necessarily a hacker movie, but
right.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, the next generation past is The Matrix. We surveyed 500 people, and that was kind of the order, right? But you're right. Sneakers is a rewatchable.
Yes.
Besides being a great movie, there's all these great scenes in it, right? So yeah. So it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, when The Matrix was released on DVD, they had a section you can actually like kind of hack in the
Oh, really?
menus.
Yeah,
awesome.
the website is still out there.
Oh, it's the website. That's right.
There's
Yeah.
Whatisthematrix.com.
That's awesome.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Did you hacksaw The Matrix?
Nope. Never. Nope.
And I'm gonna just put a plug in for Black Hat. I know people hate that movie. All right, okay, but it's gorgeous.
What was that, Joff?
I know, but
isn't
the guy that
in that one?
Yeah.
the guy that played somebody like me in the movie.
Chris Helmsworth.
Yeah, the guy that plays somebody like me is Thor. How can you not like that? All right, so yeah, you should go back and watch it.
Hey, it kept my wife interested for a little while, right?
Sun's out, guns out, baby.
That's the thing. They'll be like, I don't like Marvel, and then they'll look at the TV screen and Thor's on the screen. And they're like, wait, hold on, can we start that one from the beginning? My wife is not a war history movie type fan. And then we watched Enemy of the Gates with Jude Law, and Jude Law is like her favorite. She's like, oh, this is pretty good.
It's a good movie, yeah, I get it.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, this is awesome. I mean, Rick, are you looking for volunteers and help? Is that
absolutely? If you guys want, I put the call out every time I talk about this, right? If you are interested in doing it, we'd love to have you, and put the word out. Okay. We're in fact, we're recruiting right now. The next season of the Canon committee starts next month.
Excellent. So,
now, you said folks can recommend books to the Canon. Can we also recommend ones to the never read list?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. That's the one I find most valuable, right? We don't, especially for people that don't read that much, and they've listened to this show and they've decided, I'm gonna be better this year. I'm gonna read one book. We don't want them to start off with a bad one.
Don't start with the bad ones, because there are some bad ones out there.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Rick, this is great stuff. I suppose we should ask you the full 5 questions now.
Yeah.
Oh, let's bring it the full Monty.
You already answered one of them. So, Rick, are you ready to play 4 questions now with Security Weekly?
Absolutely. Bring it.
3 words.
4.25.
That's right. 3 words to describe yourself.
Oh, 3 words to describe myself. Reader. Biker. Dog lover. How about that?
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Knife.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Imposter syndrome.
Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead,
fictional or otherwise.
Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Sounds like you thought about that before, Rick.
No, I just watched a movie with them. Right, so
there you go. Well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've heard the call for help, and I think many of us on the show and listening are willing to help in some capacity. I love that you are highlighting books that many of us know and love. So this is an awesome project.
Well, thanks for letting me come on, guys. I really appreciate it. And if you want to come and help me, just let me know, and we'll bring you on. And get the word out. Okay, it's a totally free resource. It's good for newbies. It's good for seasoned professionals. So take advantage.
Outstanding. You can find Rick on the CyberWire podcast as well. Thanks for coming on the show. Coming up next, the security news. Stay tuned. Cybercriminals are using social engineering, loaded with urgency and fear, to successfully prey on victims, your employees, or your customers. Protect your Office 365 email from today's most sophisticated attacks with Barracuda Email Threat Scanner. It's a free tool to help protect your business from these hard-to-detect attacks. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner uses artificial intelligence to hunt and eliminate Office 365 email threats. Find the cybersecurity threats hiding in your Office 365 email right now. Get your free email threat scan at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Qualys has brought together vulnerability management and patch management, letting security teams discover vulnerabilities and apply patches immediately, all within a single, unified app. Sign up for a free trial of Qualys VMDR, vulnerability management, detection, and response today at securityweekly.com/Qualys. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. If you have a specific guest or topic you'd like us to cover on one of the upcoming shows, you can do that and submit your suggestions for guests or topics by visiting securityweekly.com/guest. Complete that form, and we review those on a regular basis. On to the security news for this week. Where did you guys want to start? Lots of good news.
Oh my gosh, Paul, you had me being gone for a couple weeks made me forget a couple stories and forget to add them and remember whether we had covered them and didn't know whether you'd covered them. So you got a bunch in there that oh shit, I figured you would have covered that already. Like the RSA hack?
Yeah, so that was one I didn't read because it was too long.
Okay, I read it.
Oh, good. See, this is why we all make such a great team.
And it's been a couple of days, and I read it in the middle of lunch during teaching class last week, which was amazing, and I had a amazing bunch of students.
What story number was this?
That is your story number 23. The full story of the RSA hack can finally be told with RSA at Wired, rather. Effectively, this one, what is it? The non-disclosure agreement that all of the folks at RSA and folks signed that worked this particular incident at RSA has expired.
This was the secure ID token hack.
This is the secure ID, which we covered on the show 10 years ago.
Was it 10 years ago?
It was, because the non-disclosure was a 10-year limit. And they talk about effectively what happened when hackers broke in and stole all of the RSA seeds that had been delivered to customers, which was on an air-gapped network. But turns out it wasn't really on an air-gapped network.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah. So it wasn't.
So the operative question is, define air gap.
Yeah, there was this one connection, and I don't remember how they said it.
The Ethernet cable was suspended in the air, so it was air gapped.
Yeah, and I really forget how they said it, but they went into total panic mode, to the point they put butcher paper over everybody's windows to prevent people from listening with lasers. And
that's interesting. I use it to wrap my briskets, but
exactly. Oh, so all right, here we go. RSA executive told me that part of their network responsible for manufacturing the security hardware tokens was protected by an air gap, a total disconnection of computers from any machine that touches the internet. But in fact, Leatham says one server on RSA's internet-connected network was linked through a firewall that allowed no other connections to the seed warehouse on the manufacturing side. Every 15 minutes, that server would pull off a certain number of seeds so that they could be encrypted, written to a CD, and given to Secure ID customers. That link was necessary. It allowed RSA's business side to help customers set up their own server that could check users' 6-digit codes. Even after the CD was shipped to a client, those seeds remained on the seed warehouse server as a backup if the customer's Secure ID or server or a setup CD were somehow corrupted. Now, instead of the once every 15-minute connections, Leatham saw logs of thousands of continuous requests for data every second. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah. So ultimately, this was arguably one of the first cybersecurity supply chain attacks that were ever seen.
First major ones with a vendor, I would say.
Yep. But they couldn't say anything for 10 years.
I can't wait to read the article again. I just didn't get to it this week. So
a great example of it's all in the implementation.
Yes.
Right. There's math and then there's implementation.
So true.
So true.
It's what bites you most of the time when it comes to cryptography, is that key, or in this case, seed management. Yeah.
Yep.
And usability too, right? Like, I think Tyler and lots of us can tell you, it's the, like, I want it encrypted, but I also don't trust myself, so I'm going to put that key or that password somewhere else, right? And that somewhere else has to have a really high level of security, though, I mean, depending on what you're protecting, right? And and I think we go the other way. Like Tyler says, and I believe this is true. I want to say that it's not true because I feel bad for him, but he has is an encrypted key, a USB key?
No, it's just a USB key he can't find.
With like $1 million or plus of Bitcoin.
Yep.
Oops.
Whoops. Yep.
That would suck.
We volunteered to go to his house and help him find it for a small finder's fee of $1 million.
And
we literally will fly there.
The sad part is, I will not reveal said friend's name, but I have a friend, and that actually went to his house.
Oh.
To help him find it. I don't know what the results were.
Well, I spoke with Tyler today, and he was still working. So my guess is no, still hasn't found it.
Yep.
He was still working.
Still looking.
Let's put it this way: when the conversation with that friend didn't realize the volume of Tyler's
property
museum,
yes,
as it were.
I have not seen this museum.
Not many people have.
Yeah, he's got like 10,000 square feet or something. 20.
No, 30.
Oh.
So Tyler, we're gonna.
He's a freaky dude.
We'll dox Tyler a little
Let's
bit.
dox Tyler right now.
Tyler bought.
That's what he gets for not showing up.
Tyler bought a church, and he lives in a church. And the church part is his home that has been remodeled into a home, and they've added additional floors and so forth. And there's also the rectory and all of the basement, the parish. So the priest's living quarters.
Yep. That's the rectory.
Yep, which had been turned into apartments.
Yep.
And there's the basement where the basement is for the function rooms, which is my understanding is effectively Tyler's lab and museum, which is 30,000 square feet.
The basement is
30,000 square feet.
Wow, I didn't know he was nearly as freaky as that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think he used the USB thumb drive on a pen test? And it's on one of those cliche dropped it in the parking lot thing?
No. Tyler probably has 300,000 or 400,000, 400 or 1,000 USB thumb drives somewhere.
Well, his family owned like a printer repair place too.
Printing company.
Is that based in the same location?
Same town.
Yeah. So
yeah, like
he's got a lot of stuff to go through.
He's a ton of stuff to go through, and has been able to acquire a ton of amazing gear over the years
because he has the place to store it.
You're right, and
doesn't get when you have 30,000 square feet just in your basement. I would totally store.
We just need to start a conference. We're going to call it TylerCon.
Yes, I agree. I like this idea a lot.
Yeah,
a lot.
We are totally just going to descend on him with like 1,000 InfoSec geeks. It's like,
and then he's going to pwn all of us because any thumb drive we find, we're going to plug it into our laptops to see if it has Bitcoin on it.
You won't even need to do that. He'll pwn us 3 other ways before we walk in the door. Yep. Dude, the church has a bell tower. I mean, just saying.
This Tyler story reminds me of a story where someone had thrown out the hard drives into the dump. I think it was in the UK, right?
The dude in the UK threw the hard drive away, and it's got like like $10 million in Bitcoin on it, and he keeps trying to petition the dump to be able to go dig it up. Like, dude, you threw that away.
You're not gonna find that.
It's been in the rain. It's been in the water. It's
I mean, it's certainly you could.
I don't know.
If he finds it, he'll have the money to do a microscope recovery of that disk platter.
It would be worth that investment.
Yes. Yep.
It just makes you wonder how much is the percentage of Bitcoin capital that's actually been wasted, right? That's lost.
Yeah.
I
mean, and maybe even not lost, but you think about what the first Bitcoin transaction was. Like, we're totally getting off topic for the story, but who cares?
I love this. This is great. We're just talking.
The first Bitcoin transaction was a developer bought a pizza to be delivered for 10,000 Bitcoin.
Wow.
10,000? Wow.
If you think about what 10,000, even after the quote post Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live crash looks like, What's a Bitcoin worth right now?
To the Googles.
Johnny is chiming in the back room right now.
Yeah, I don't know. What is it? About 40 grand?
What's
something like that?
I will tell you. Yep. The
38,800. $52.10 to be precise.
So $38,000, and you paid 10,000 Bitcoin for pizza. That pizza now is worth $38 million.
Oh,
that was a tasty fucking pizza.
Right.
It better have been.
Yeah. But honestly, at that time,
right,
Bitcoin was worthless. Bitcoin was literally worthless.
But to Josh's point, right? There's a lot of Bitcoin just floating around out there that people are like, I don't know, like a couple of dollars.
Like you tell, like I will shit you not. I was into mining Dogecoin and a few other coins, like Ron Paul coin. Like that was an actual thing, and it was a total joke, like Dogecoin. And just a couple weeks ago, I was literally tearing through some old hard drives to see if they had Dogecoin wallets that I hadn't expunged yet, because those were potentially worth thousands to $10,000s of dollars. Like, do you know what I found? Nothing.
Old porn.
It's not old if it's still good.
That's right. We call that vintage. It's vintage or classic.
Right.
Yeah, classic.
The people in it stayed the same age.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, there was a lot of bush in that. Anyway.
Hey now. I'm not that old.
Oh boy! I don't know how to follow that up.
To round off the RSA story, if I remember correctly, the initial Victor phishing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. And some of the results: supply chain attack. It's interesting. At the time, they confirmed that Lockheed Martin used the stolen RSID, the RSA breach to compromise their network. And then later, now after the 10 years have passed, those folks involved at RSA said, yeah, no, Lockheed Martin, that wasn't us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There is an unpatchable vulnerability in Apple's new Mac chip. I have to say, I don't know what your guys' take on this was, but I wasn't really that impressed. Did you guys read this?
What's that?
The unpatchable vulnerability in Apple's chip?
Which one? What was the name of that vulnerability? It had a name, because they all do.
It's got a name and a website and a song, a dance, a logo.
Is this the XC
Miracles?
Miracles. This is Miracles.
M1 Rickles. Yeah, Miracles, right? I did not read this one. I saw that it got posted somewhere that I get some news from, and I didn't dive into it.
So there's rings for the kernel, and the hardware helps enforce the rings. And in ARM, EL0 is actually the userland ring, because of course it's backwards, flip your bits. The userland programs are able to access one register, but only certain parts of one register that happen at a lower ring, which is a higher number in ARM. EL3, I think, is the... And so they're able, userland programs can
interact
use
with
this
with a higher ring.
You communicate with other programs via these two registers in two parts of one of the registers in the hardware design.
Wow. So, it turns out that there's a reason that specialization actually occurred in the industry. Just saying. Anyway,
are you saying this isn't your area of expertise, or Apple should not have specialized their chips and done their own thing?
I don't think Apple should have taken this venture. But what's the practical exploitability? Did that story?
This is where I was at, Joff. Right? I don't think it's a huge deal. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like, remember we talked a lot about Rowhammer. It's like,
There's a new Rowhammer.
We can do this, but what is the practical application? Like, is it's same thing with TLS attacks. It's like I have to have, 10,000 rounds of da-da-da-da-da, and then I can decrypt one character. that's not very practical.
Yeah.
I mean, practicality probably maps back to motivation on the adversary. So even if it's really tough, but you have an adversary that knows it's there and they're going to go through the trouble.
That's usually where these crop up,
and
right?
And have the ability to get around that time memory trade-off.
Yeah, like any exploit, right? They start off any level, whether it's CPU, microcode, software, whatever. It all starts off at, we break it by denial of service, and then it's like, okay, now what can we do?
Yeah, now it's the next step, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is this I didn't read the article, but is this an example where some decisions should have been made to put that in microcode, or is this a scenario where like performance just outweighed the risk and they had to make optimize it in hardware?
User land programs do write to registers as a normal part of operation, from what I understand. Please correct me if I'm wrong, audience.
No, that's true.
No, of course.
And but there are certain registers that are in the protected ring that user land programs should never write to. However, this one, you can write to parts of it that then other user land programs can read from. So it's a
right.
read.
It can be used as a conduit.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like inter-process memory sharing. It can be used as a conduit to pass data. So it's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, but again, the practicality of it all.
Yeah, and I'm trying to give some shout outs. I'm looking for some stuff here. Give me there we go. So we it's too bad Lee's not here in the updated version of the 617 class. Josh Wright put together an amazing challenge for us for some fuzzing, and Josh wrote a vulnerable version of host APD, and we compile it on ARM. And it's always we teach students how to do some fuzzing, to interact with GDB, to find where the crash happens, and so forth. But it's always one of those, like, for the extra challenge, see if you can get remote code execution. No one's ever done it. And a student...
and Josh put an RCE vulnerability in host APD?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, he put in a vulnerability that causes a crash.
Yeah, I gotcha.
To Geoff's point, like the first step is the denial of service, the crash. And that's always like the open-ended challenge in that lab is like get remote code execution. Like you're gonna have to know ARM assembly and a whole bunch of other stuff to make that happen. You're probably not gonna do that in your SAMS class.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
And a gentleman, Felix Schalik, wrote to a bunch of us at SANS and said, "Hey, by the way, here's your remote code execution."
Wow.
For that lab.
Damn.
Like, God damn. So we're going to start including that as part of the solutions to that lab, like the above and beyond solutions, and giving Felix total credit for that, because like
that's amazing.
As the instructors, we hadn't even gone that deep with it. And we had only surmised it was possible.
Right.
And he made the quote possible happen. To Geoff's point, you got to start with a denial of service, and then you can go from there.
See, but this is what scares me about risk decisions that we make, because I believe, being in this industry as long as I have, that there is always a Felix or two or more out there that, like you said, that would make the impossible impossible. Like there could not be an exploit for that vulnerability, any vulnerability. There could be like a really crappy proof of concept that just causes a crash. Everyone goes, yeah, like I'll patch that when I get to it, based on the fact that one, there either is no exploit, or two, the exploits that are out there are really just denial of service. Therefore, I'm going to prioritize it lower. Like I don't agree with that approach because of people like Felix.
Yep.
People like Felix, you just have to assume have gotten some base level of access anyways.
Yeah. And Geoff, I gotta let you comment here. The email from Felix said, talking about some ROP chains and stuff that he did. Where is his comment here? It was basically like, hey, I just learned this stuff on ARM, so my knowledge of ARM ROP chains is about a couple of hours old. I apologize if the code is sloppy. Like,
that's perfect, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a perfect illustration of what can happen, right? It just takes some intellect to apply. So that denial of service thing, that very first crack in the door is should be enough for us to say, okay, we have a serious problem. Because, once exploitable, even just to crash the machine, the next step is going to follow inevitably, right? We're going to go to that next step.
Yeah, and we saw that with a Windows exploit a couple of years ago, and there was even a website that was out there, and I can't remember the CVE, and it was like CVE blah 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 something status, and it was a denial of service attack, and it was one that a lot of folks surmised could be turned into remote code executable, remote code execution and wormable. And there was like a web page out there, status, like, is it wormable yet, type of thing. And nope, from the best of my knowledge, it never happened.
If the reason for the crash is because you're executing memory in a spot you're not supposed to be executing memory, there's a good chance that you can exploit it later, right?
Yep.
There was
Just a matter of time.
Another vulnerability in Mac OS. There were some 0 days apparently that allowed attackers to bypass privacy features and take screenshots from the webcam. JAMF, is that how do you say JAMF or JAMP?
JAMF. I call it JAMF.
I don't even know.
JAMP's just, it's not one that rolls off the tongue for me. JAMP researchers said the malware controls legit applications that can capture screen records or screenshots without requiring user consent as soon as it infects the device. Don't they call it Zoom? I guess you do.
Wow.
Oh, man. Shots fired. I love it.
I mean, this is recent code, right? Because it's recently that Apple put that check in there and actually enabled those permissions. And Zoom is an example where you have to go in and give it permissions to actually be able to do the screen record.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't know. Capturing the screen could yield some results, but it's very opportunistic. It's also, getting footage from someone's webcam is more of a privacy violation than what we traditionally talk about as a breach of some kind, right? It's a breach of privacy.
Could they do it without turning on the light that indicates that the camera's on?
There used to be a interpreter module that could do that without turning on the light.
Was there?
This was like pre-Mac OS 10, OS X days.
To me, that's a great example of where that should just be a hardware thing. If the camera has power, the light has power. Take that out of software, right? Like that control to me was just implemented wrong.
Does the light only come on if the camera's active?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that has to be software, like if software is accessing it.
Yep, and now that runs into the question about how much of the software you use on your OS that might not use the internal built-in camera.
Yep.
Like, I don't use an internal camera at my day job, and it has a light.
Because usually they're 720p.
Right, like the Logitech C922 type of stuff I've got on a mount.
Same maybe on Paul's
like
laptop.
this.
Paul's got an amazing laptop. I eventually guess that's a 1080p built-in webcam.
Probably, but still a bad camera.
Yeah, still bad camera. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. He's probably got a really bad webcam, but he's got so many monitors.
Right.
It is a bad webcam, I will say. I don't care if it's 1080p or 720. Either way, it's bad. Webcam quality.
Yeah, and then it depends on software too.
It's like sensor,
Don't try and change that in Microsoft Teams because you'll just end up on the support request on Microsoft. That's like, people are asking for that and they don't give it to them. And don't even bother looking it up on Linux because you can't change it.
And that was one of the things that was kind of shocking to me last week. When I teach for SANS, I don't normally have the camera on except for a little bit of introduction every day and that type of stuff. But I was asked if I could keep the camera on all week. So I did. And one of the things that I noticed is that, like, whenever I do podcast, Zoom, Google Meet, you name it, the focus is always pretty good, like stays in focus. Even with moving around and Italian hand gestures and those types of things. But with Go to Training platform for SANS, like the focus was constantly in and out all the time. And I was like,
it's application dependent.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the options that you had for adjusting the camera in Go to Training were potato or not potato. Potato or not potato. Right?
Yeah, so when I do virtual training these days, I actually will tell people, it's like, look, I'm going to be on camera for the introduction and to say hello, and then I'm just going to turn it off because it's just it's difficult otherwise.
We're totally off. Like,
well, now if you have this vulnerability, I can turn it back on for you.
Yeah, I mean, please do, because you know what?
Paul.
I had a great week with the camera on, and I just put it behind all my slides, and I wasn't even self-conscious to know that I was on camera. I just had to remember not to pick my nose.
Yeah.
And
this you know,
and I probably even forgot. It was still good.
And screenshots were taken.
Dude, I used to run back in the day of JennyCam, we used to have an apartment that had cameras in every room, and I still somewhere have pictures. There was a camera at my desk at work, and I have one of my coworkers who grabbed a screenshot of me like going for the digger at my desk.
Stuff happens.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Stuff happens.
Like life. Like, you got to pick your nose every once in a while.
That's a great title for this episode, I guess.
You got to pick your nose every once in a while.
Sometimes you got to go digging for gold, whether that be Bitcoin wallets or
picking your nose. Picking your nose.
Keeping it real. Hey, one of the stories that actually stuck out to me was the VMware critical emergency patch vCenter.
You guys are picking all the stories I didn't really read all that well.
Yeah, look,
well, maybe you should quantity versus quality.
Yeah,
Paul.
I know. That's the thing.
Yeah, look, I'll admit I didn't read into it a lot.
Joff, which story was this?
Oh, so Joff just read the headline and expected the rest of us to read the story.
Joff, which story was this?
Pretty much. Yeah. This is story number. Hold on. I get that. Gave you. Oh, crap.
17.
Now. Yeah, thank
16 and 17.
16 and 17.
Okay.
Anyway, what caught my attention was. Just really the idea that whenever I'm on a pen test, the last thing that is patched is always VMware.
Yeah, that's
right?
A good point.
Because organizations are like deadly afraid of dealing with patching VMware because it's holding up the rest of their infrastructure normally, right? It's like, oh my God, I can't patch vCenter, I can't patch I especially can't patch ESXi because holy shit, I got to take down like 40 servers, you know? So it is not unusual when you're vulnerability scanning inside of an organization to find all kinds of VMware.
You know what else? You know what else you should look for? And I'm guilty of this. Apache Guacamole.
Apache
Very similar, right? It's the access to all the systems, and I'm like, if I screw that up, I'm going to lose access to all my systems.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing. Right?
And Joff, the concept of the cobbler's kids have the worst shoes.
Mm-hmm.
I will fully admit that a system that I retired not 6 months ago.
Wasn't fully patched and up to date in running VMware, Larry?
Yep. Because it ran so many systems that I was reliant on. And turns over time, I became less and less reliant on those systems. And in fact, there are systems that I probably still really need to have up, but aren't up, and I just have to have time to migrate them. Running ESXi 5.
Yeah, point illustrated, right? And I admit it too.
The nice part is when it's us, we can go, oh, that was just a honeypot.
Yeah.
We're researching something.
Yeah, I would left it vulnerable on purpose for research purposes.
It was a
honeypot.
It was a honeypot with no instrumentation in front of it.
That's right. I was testing a theory.
To me, we always talk about if you have physical access to something, you can't really secure it, right? It's game over at that point.
Yeah.
And in this scenario, right, owning that system is like getting
physical access.
Mm-hmm.
And when I used to do pen testing, absolutely, that'd be the last thing patched, and we'd get access, and we'd say, all right, well, which system do we want to then have physical access to? And then we'd own that system too.
Yep. Speaking of which, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but the author of this article I see come up over and over again, Dan Gooden.
Dan Gooden's a epic.
He would probably be an amazing guest to have on the show.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, go patch your VMware vCenter stuff. And I was reading it and looking at it, and I'm like, one of the ones that the big deal was that it's the vSAN stuff. The vSAN health check plugin. I'm like, I don't do vSAN stuff on my which is enabled by default.
By default.
Yeah,
never mind.
And then you read that one line. That one line. Enabled by default.
Fuck.
Because support tickets, that's why.
Yep.
They want less of those.
Yep. All right.
There was a couple, speaking of the RSA hack we discussed earlier, there was two stories in here. that were chronicling big breaches: the Colonial Pipeline ransomware and SolarWinds. The SolarWinds one is interesting. There's a couple of angles on this one. So the SolarWinds CEO was a keynote at RSA last week.
That was last week. Yep.
So there was two things that the headline caught my attention. They did a good job with the headline, actually, because the CEO revealed that the timeline, the hack happened much earlier. So when they looked back, they saw the very early reconnaissance activities happening in January of 2019. So there was a lot of planning and well, I mean, that doesn't say there was necessarily planning, but there was the beginnings of the idea in 2019. It's tough to say with any certainty that they had planned this and then started to do the reconnaissance in 2019, or they started doing the reconnaissance and was like, oh, there's some interesting stuff there. Like, how could we take advantage of this? Not sure how that played out. So that was interesting. But also, I guess during the congressional hearings, which I didn't watch, I probably should have, that they blamed the intern. Like, the whole thing was blamed on an intern.
Oh man, that is not nice.
There's some backpedaling by the CEO. He was like, what happened at the congressional hearings where we attributed it to an intern was not appropriate and was not what we are about, or is not what we are about, or is not what we are about. He said, we have learned from that, and I want to reset it here by saying that we are a very safe environment and we want to attract and retain the best talent. I read that as backpedaling.
Is that like saying what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas?
But this time it didn't stay there, and we're totally sorry.
Yeah.
And we took our medicine, and everything's okay now.
We were testifying in front of Congress. It sounded like a good idea to blame the intern.
And we swear we didn't touch that intern inappropriately.
We thought it was off the record, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's Congress, so they bought it, right? I mean, that's a given. Yeah, that's a shame. Anyway, stuff happens.
The Colonial Pipeline ransomware hackers had a secret weapon, the self-promoting cybersecurity firm. Did we talk about this story already or not?
I wasn't here for 2 weeks, so I don't know, but I think there were some interesting stuff.
I can't remember if I talked about the show or somewhere else. That's my only...
Talk about it. Who cares? Because if they missed the last...
Bitdefender publicized its tool alerting... Bitdefender alerted DarkSide to the lapse, which involved reusing the same digital key to unlock multiple victims. The next day, DarkSide had seen that and said they had repaired the problem and that new companies have nothing to hope for, and then went on and hacked the Colonial Pipeline.
Oh, man.
So Bitdefender publicized that you could recover the key. I wasn't sure of the technical details. Apparently, there were other researchers that came to the same conclusion.
But
it was like,
published it.
Yeah, we're not publishing that because then DarkSide's going to know and they're going to fix it.
So what's the answer there? Because
responsible disclosure, whether doesn't matter what it is, even if it's evil attacker code and attacker groups, we have to disclose this responsibly. Hey, DarkSide, you've got a vulnerability in the way you're encrypting stuff. You should really fix that. Yeah, no.
That's a double-edged sword, right? The other one is they could have said, "Hey, we found out some issues, and we can provide decryption codes. Just reach out." But then that starts to seem like ambulance chasing. Oh, if you want the discount, that code, it's going to be. They're saying Bitcoin. We're just saying $10. They should have said, "We'll give it to you. We'll provide a solution to you for free." They could have been very cagey about it, and.
Yeah, it's a good point. How do you do the information sharing?
Yeah.
This is probably one where government is the right answer, right? FBI is probably the right answer. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement in some case to give it to the victim.
And vet the victim. Because if I was DarkSide, I'd be like, oh yeah, totally. I want to know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, you can only compartmentalize that information for so long.
Yeah.
I feel like it could have helped more people rather than just putting it on a blog post. Because all that does is help the attacker.
It's good marketing, though.
It is good marketing because we're using the word Bitdefender a lot. Yeah. I don't know. That's a tricky one.
Yeah. The pipeline one had some interesting things, back to our discussions with...
they got ransomware, right?
With some legislation And I think it was something that Lee posted in Slack about basically there was some legislation that is now saying, oh, hell, you run a pipeline, you should do cybersecurity. Like,
yeah.
Yup. Like, it was a little bit of along the lines of too little, too late, but better than not at all. And I'm not seeing it back there.
But I hear these stories have interesting twists and turns.
Really?
Sorry, that was a terrible joke.
Is that a pipeline joke?
Oh, jeez.
You're really milking this one, huh? One of the interesting takeaways, sorry if I forget if it was talked about on the show, is that
Wait, you don't watch every episode?
Not every. I'm an audio person, so I listen. Is that okay?
That's okay. Do you listen to every episode? Maybe not every. You can be honest.
Of course
it's all right.
not. Sorry.
Wait, you're supposed to listen to these?
I stopped listening to every episode when you started having multiple different episodes beyond Security Weekly, right?
It's a lot of content.
Enterprise Security Weekly. Mm-hmm. It became a lot.
It's a really big pipeline.
It's a big pipeline. Wow. I need some type of canon on just Security Weekly in general.
That's true.
Which ones are the must listen to?
All of them. Anyway, continue.
So even with an air gap, right, it's a good lesson in, hey, what other systems are critical to your operations? So you could have something that's critical to your critical data, but you could still be in trouble if your operations are separate and hindered.
I've been harping on that point a lot lately, Paul, because we talk a lot about data security. And I feel like this was the transition from PCI to ransomware, where with PCI, it was about data security because we had to protect the card data. And we really, and rightfully so, we get hung up on data security. I have to protect my private information of my customers, employees, things of that nature. However, operations is still really important. And that's not about data. That's about keeping the business running. And disrupting that is what they're going after now. Because I think largely the focus was, keep people out and keep my data safe, not keep my business running.
Back to availability.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And the one that I find interesting about the whole pipeline deal, and that we're hearing rumors, and I haven't been able to necessarily confirm and so forth, but they very much could have kept the pipeline operational from the OT side. It was the fact that their IT side that manages billing got hacked, and they couldn't determine how much that they were delivering over the pipeline to bill for it.
Wouldn't that mean that there's data coming at least out of the OT environment into the IT environment,
a data diode in that environment is absolutely the case. And the data could have been being sent to a system that couldn't receive it.
Yes. And what you mean by diode is like
one-way.
Waterfall security makes it's one example of making a diode, right?
One way only.
Which I think is some like really cool technology.
Yep. And you can do a diode in software, you can do a diode in hardware, and you
they do it in hardware, which is really
which
awesome.
is crazy.
You can clip an Ethernet wire.
Yeah.
Literally can.
Yep. Now,
like USB too, you can clip the data ends and just have it do power.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget sitting in Sec 503 with Mike Poor, and we always blame Mike Poor, right?
Always.
This was about 2006, so this is a while ago. And Mike said, "Yeah, I got a syslog server." He's like, "Just plug in the Ethernet cable and cut the transmit wire so that it can only receive data. It's a syslog server that just logs, right? Mm-hmm. Go log into the server from the freaking console. You don't need to SSH to the server, right? Yep. All it is a log bucket."
Yep.
It's a good concept.
The thing that I think that is really terrifying about this is that the pipeline deal, the reason they shut the operational side, the OT side down, was because the IT wasn't functioning and they couldn't accurately bill.
That makes sense, though.
It does, but to prevent panic and from people to stop pumping gasoline into trash bags and laundry baskets.
with holes in them.
Yeah, like you
saw that meme too.
Yeah, you could have prevented this large scale hoarding panic thing by working with the authorities, basically. And I hate to say this, just to cover it up. Seriously, if you had just continued to let fuel flow through the pipeline, you probably could, as a company, they probably could have estimated, just like they do with my goddamn power, they could have estimated my monthly bill. They could have estimated how much capacity over so much time, how much, and knowing how much the valves were open and so forth and so on. They could have estimated billing. And to help prevent inciting panic, I hate to say it, the government would have made them right. Had they just shut up and talked to the FBI and been like, hey, look, this is what's going on. I really think that that's a scenario that could have worked, and they could have prevented so much. Yeah, and they could have prevented so much from knowing that the Russians were successful.
How much? Just
so much fail.
But then we wouldn't have the memes that we have today.
I know.
That's right.
I know.
Funny story. I did take delivery of my Tesla the week before that happened. I knew nothing about what was going to happen.
How much do we prevent now from knowing this story? So by having this story public, as public as it is, right? How much future opportunities will be prevented?
Maybe some.
It sounds like they're scared and maybe moving on to other targets, or maybe shutting down that specific operation.
Well, it brought too much light. I think that's the, ransomware is kind of interesting in that it's a very revealing attack. That was one of the nice things about stealing credit cards is you could do that in the shadows. When you're collecting a ransom, like you're putting yourself out there, and that's why I truly believe we see group personas come and go. It very well could be the same people behind the scenes, but they, I think, have a strategy where if it were me, I would just be burning down my infrastructure and starting over.
Yeah,
especially they've got the funding to do that. I mean, Colonial alone, they got $4.4 million. Sweet, burn it all down, rebuild it, go on vacation.
Rebuild it as some new name, and take a fraction, $200,000 of the $4.2 million that we got to rebuild new infrastructure to have some new ransomware under a new name, and run that out of Taiwan. Like, I'm in the wrong business. Seriously, I really am.
You're in the right business on the wrong side.
See,
I think that's what you meant to say.
No, yeah, I'm in the right business. I'm on the wrong side. Absolutely. The problem is that it's not illegal until you get caught, right? And that's the scary part, is getting caught.
Then you're on the wrong side again.
Then you're on the wrong side, and I don't look good in orange.
Orange jumpsuit.
No. So
that's if you even get one in international.
Just not my color.
You won't have any problems finding that USB drive, eh?
They'll know right where it is. What's that from? My friend from many years ago said it only hurts the first time, just like in prison.
That sounds like the end of the show or a segue.
Segue to something else.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to talk about protecting your Wi-Fi devices from the new frag vulnerabilities. If you look at what is this frag attack, you weren't here the week we talked about it, Larry.
No, and
therefore we didn't talk about it much. Just saying.
So, admittedly, I did not get a chance to delve into it super deeply, but I did get to have a brief conversation with Matthew about it. That's the amazing thing about our community is that so many of the folks that are like doing this huge, amazing research are still so approachable.
Right.
Like I share a Discord with Matthew.
And Matthew's the one that found it?
Matthew and his team.
Yeah.
You found it, largely Matthew. Did a bunch of work for a number of years. He found it as part of his crack attacks stuff. But crack attacks took a different direction, and he had to put this by the wayside, and then went back to it and found it's fragmentation-based attacks for 802.11, just like we would see with IP. IP-based fragmentation attacks. You talk about overlapping fragments and fragments that are too long and too short. Very similar types of activities.
Fragmentation reassembly,
fragmentation reassembly, and some issues with encrypted networks that I don't quite understand yet, but just because I haven't had the time to delve into it. But Matthew is super approachable, and in fact, many folks took, as Matthew put it, his original article sort of out of context, and he published a follow-up with some more clarity. And I went through his article and said, hey Matthew, you got a spelling mistake on this part of the article. He's like, dude, I make that mistake all the time. And I'm like, dude, I make that mistake all the time. He spelled rouge. So.
Oh, geez.
So it wasn't frog instead of frag. Okay.
No, it was rogue it was rouge instead of rogue. But he went on to explain further about some fragmentation attacks. And 802.11 fragmentation attacks are far from new. I mean, they're probably 10 years old.
So I think this is when we covered last week, and I saw in one of my Discord channels that Cedric Blanchard, the one that died in a parachuting accident.
Yep,
that was Cedric, right? He wrote Wi-Fi tap, and some of these fragmentation attacks were in Wi-Fi tap. Did I get that right? We're talking about the same Wi-Fi attack, right?
I think you're right. The other one too, amazing wireless researcher that I talked to about this attack was Joshua Wright.
Oh yeah,
and his comment was, "I have been talking about fragmentation attacks for how long?"
Yeah, Josh knew about this stuff too.
Yeah, and absolutely, we theorized about that in older versions of SEC 617. We talked about on day 6 when we didn't have a CTF about IDS and IPS and about how fragmentation attacks exactly like this could work. And as Wi-Fi evolved over the years, it's become more damaging. So interesting type of stuff there, and no disservice to Matthew for actually putting some of this stuff into application.
Well, it's certainly garnered a lot of attention. To attacks that maybe have certain aspects and other tools and stuff that we've theorized about in the past. So
and now actually come to fruition, which is amazing. The other one that I think is a huge disservice to the community, and I'm going to call them out. There was a website called WVE.org, the Wireless Vulnerabilities and Enumeration .org. And it was a collection of...
There was a website?
There was. There was an 802.11 collection of proposed, theoretical, and all sorts of CVEs for wireless, but it was wireless VEs. And it was purchased by HP.
It redirects to arubanetworks.com right now.
It was purchased by HP.
Which Aruba was purchased by HP.
At the time. And the entire contents of... after a couple of years, the entire contents of WVE went away.
Oh.
And only a fraction of it is available via archive.org. Oh. To the point that there are attacks that we talk about in SEC 617 for doing denial of service attacks that will still work against WPA3 networks that WPA3 networks have some protection against some denial of service attacks, but there are 3 that I can think of that are outside of the protections from WPA3 and were documented in WVE.
I remember WVE now.
And are gone.
I remember the backstory behind it now too.
Yeah, and are gone because they weren't captured by archive.org. And they exist in that class. And I've attempted to publish exploit code and it's not good. I'd love pull requests. So, but they're still there and they still work.
Interesting.
Yep.
Hacking a Boeing 747.
Yeah.
Which is retired. In certain areas?
No, it's there's
I
didn't get the whole story. I didn't get the whole story behind.
Joff, you had a comment there?
Oh no, I'm just saying that retired, maybe in the States, maybe in some richer Western countries, but they're still flying somewhere.
Yeah. So the big one that I got out of this is that they were allowed to publish this story about getting persistent access to the in-flight entertainment, the IFE, on some 747s, specifically because the specific IFE has been fully retired. Every aircraft that featured this IFE because of COVID and the reduction in fleet has been retired. There are no more of these in operation.
In the U.S. or in the world?
In the world. There are no more of these anywhere in the world flying.
Oh, interesting.
They were running on Windows NT 4.
Microsoft IIS HTTPD 4.0.
Yep. Yeah. And
talk about the Wayback Machine.
Holy crap! I remember that default page now too. They've got the default page that used to come up.
Yeah, but seriously, like you think about the longevity, like they retired some of these aircraft with these IFEs last year during the pandemic because there were so few people flying, and that it was the time to reduce their fleet. Last year. Now, very much so in these cases that these weren't the new 777s with the whole fly-by-wire and stuff and firewalls, and these were systems that were fully disconnected, fully air-gapped from flight controls, and was confirmed to be so, and so forth. The part that I found that was absolutely fascinating about this story was that when they did the research, they were doing these researches, the research against the IFE on junked aircraft, like aircraft sitting in a junkyard.
Yeah.
And the only way to get power to the IFE was to power the aircraft at like $1,500 an hour, because they had to pay for fuel for the on-ground generator, or you stood up, or you actually powered the aircraft with one of their turbines to produce electricity to power the aircraft. Effectively, what they ended up doing was they paid enough to get a copy of the OS so that they could reproduce it in the lab and not actually have to power an aircraft.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that they said that, like, they're running Meterpreter in Metasploit against it, and Meterpreter won't run because Meterpreter relies on C-Script, and C-Script is used through almost all versions of Windows. I'm reading from the article.
Except for this one.
Any Visual Basic, C# or other scripts can be created and then run C-Script. However, NT4 doesn't include C-Script. It included W-Script, which rings a bell in a lot of the older systems.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get any of the payloads to work because the more modern payloads aren't backported to. Why bother backporting to NT4?
That's called dependency hell protection.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
I forget how they did something with hashes after that.
Yeah.
Which hashes on the NT4 were really heinous. That
just goes to show.
Landman? There was probably is that a Landman hash?
Yeah, that's Landman.
That looks
days.
like Landman, right? Has to be.
Landman days. Yeah, 2 7-character DES encrypted, 14 characters max.
Right? Split
all uppercase.
7 and 7, right?
7 and 7. Yep.
Well, that's a throwback. Oh, the good old days.
What could possibly go wrong?
Right.
Like, you know,
so much easier than Kerber roasting.
Oh,
it's funny the things that made that hack difficult, right?
Was it so old?
Because it's so old.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me dig up my
was the hard part.
Let me dig up my loft crack version 1.
Yeah, like that's becoming a thing. Like more and more, we're encountering like that one old system that is going to lead to complete compromise for some crazy stuff.
And no one has the tools that work because even like if you tried to run an older version of loft crack, it wouldn't run because it requires Windows 95.
And like that's one of the things too that some of the newcomers to the industry are like, oh, just run my PowerShell thing, and
no,
there is no
always going to work.
Nope. And that's one of the things that I'm finding interesting about doing the IoT course that we're writing, and we're
sometimes running old is protection.
Yeah, like
all these hipster hackers with their PowerShell.
Yeah, like
run NT4. Try that shit with me.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about like some of these things that I'm talking about in the IoT class that we're working on. And it's, we're back to hacking like 1990s again.
Yeah, like Windows 3.1 for workgroups.
And like Linux.
3.11,
Linux,
baby.
Like, seriously, like we talk about, some of the password cracking tools that we use, and they expect a Etsy password and Etsy shadow file.
Yeah.
To crack passwords. And I'm like, no, some of these systems just use Etsy password. You don't need a shadow. Yeah.
And any user could read it, and it had the crypto passwords in there. Wow.
And they weren't salted.
Yep.
They're not salted.
But the tools that we have nowadays, they expect that, no, you're going to use Etsy Shadow and Etsy Password because no one would be that dumb. Except
then you end up writing scripts to actually translate the old to the new so that you can use the new tools again.
Unshadow for the win. Like, God. Like,
well, because getting the older tools, like my example with Medusa, right? It's getting the older tools running is a huge pain in the butt.
Yeah.
It was then.
Just like it was. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Just like it was.
Right? Like, yeah. Exactly.
It's funny. I'm looking at my VMware Fusion output right now. And I'm looking at like, I've got Sec 556 and a bunch of stuff, Windows 10 and Kali and Sec 617 and Windows 7. Wait, what? I have a Windows 7 VM. And for the longest time, I actually had a Windows 98 VM.
I'm guilty. I've still got a Windows 7 VM.
You know why I have a Windows 7 VM? If you look at the preview, it has AVR Studio version 4 in the suspend screen, ready to click the button to be able to flash Zigbee wireless adapters with Josh's firmware.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, interesting.
It's the only thing I have it for.
In my case, I just have it because you never know, and I've actually needed it.
Yep.
So
terrifying.
You still find it on pen test, Windows 7?
Yeah,
I do. Not too often. It's just once in a while, but it's one of those, just like Larry was saying, it's one of those, that system over in the corner, we don't touch that because it's a special snowflake. And that's the one that'll, take down the entire network.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Is that running Windows ME?
No, Windows CE. You know what happens when you take Windows CE and you shorten it to WinCE?
No.
It describes the action you do when you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Wince.
Oh.
It's true.
Oh God!
Oh.
Please end the show now.
We still have stuff to talk about.
One of the ones that I'd love to talk about is your story.
I know it's past your bedtime, Joff. But
it's your story number 21.
It is.
Paul, your story number 21. Did you read this?
Leaky John Deere's APIs. This was an awesome write-up, and I didn't get through the whole thing.
I did.
I kind of skipped around. I got to the part where they could do username enumeration on their API, and then I skipped over some amazing technical research that I probably should have read and went to the end and kind of glossed over it. And then basically it sounded like they pwned John Deere 6 ways to Sunday. And at the end they said suddenly they had a private vulnerability disclosure program. It did not exist when we started. 24 hours later, I received the invitation to the program. I was the only researcher in the program. The program was created that day. Every single asset had no bounty. The company does not allow public disclosure.
Yep. And
oh wow.
And
not the way to do it.
And not only that, after the fact that the researcher said, "Yeah, thanks for the invite, but no thanks.
Yeah,
boom, I'm going to go publish this stuff. I can't abide by these rules." So yeah.
Well, John Deere's got a history, a legacy around shady stuff.
Yep, like I wish Jack Daniel were here because total lack of right to repair, and that
and he makes great cocktails too. And his beard is really sexy.
This is true.
Really
multiple things, and to the point that there's a bunch of Ukrainian hackers that have hacked the John Deere firmware for like $1 million combines, so that the purchasers of these combines can continue to run their operation and do the things that they need to do without the being locked into John Deere's services and so forth. And the stuff from Sick Codes is just continued
highlight of
their failure to the point that they were able debauchery to the point that they were able to sign up for a developer access for John Deere. They figured out what some of the API calls were, then deleted all their cookies and found out that they could access the API without any authentication.
And hammered the API, and there was no rate limiting on it.
Hammered the API with no rate limiting, and were able to discover usernames and no authentication. Then they were able to do also with no authentication if they had a VIN for one of the John Deere stuff, they could query the API and get location and registered owners and addresses and so forth.
That's
and they were theorized like, no, that's the registered of the dealer. And no. You go and Google the addresses and they're farms.
Right.
Clearly farms with no API. Like, now you just start enumerating VINs. And the VINs weren't terribly complex.
Ooh.
And then they found that you could start modifying software and modifying firmware that you could send to stuff unauthenticated to their API so that you could push updated firmware to devices that weren't yours. That was my understanding of the article.
That is a new definition of harvesting accounts.
Yeah.
Yes. And
what could possibly go wrong?
And they disclosed to CISA effectively that like this could very much affect
Disrupt the supply chain.
disrupt supply chain, disrupt production of critical assets.
Food?
Yeah. And then John Deere went and said, hey, we got a vulnerability disclosure program. And they went and looked and they're like, oh, yeah, submit to our HackerOne thing by this email at johndeere.com. So they went to HackerOne and they're like, they don't have a disclosure program. And then later on, as more research progressed, I'm like, oh, yeah, they got a vulnerability thing. And as you described, yep. Tons of models, no bounty, no public disclosure.
That's just...
Yeah, that's lawyers. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, that's just like no visibility or influence of security on any of their developers in the business.
And admittedly, they found as part of with the folks that founded Sick.Codes and their team there, they found multiple issues that they reported over multiple times, and the first one that they found was 72 hours that they took to fix it. The username stuff. Like,
that's just the tip of the iceberg. It sounded like that.
And it was like, that's cool. Why didn't you tell me you fixed it? Like, that's awesome, but your developers went silent after I reported it. Yeah. Dirty tricks.
Well, hopefully this shines a spotlight on it. Yep. But the spotlight's shined on them for stuff like this in the past.
And that said, thinking about the future, I really hope that, one, this encourages companies like this to do better security audits and understanding the way folks will interact with all of their services, and put a better light on how they choose to deal with the community. So
I when you see stuff like this, it strikes me that it's such an opportunity, right? Because the right way, in my opinion, to do it is just to be upfront and say, okay, look, guys, mea culpa, we need help. I'm coming to the information security community. We're going to do this, this, and this, and just be really open. We want to hire a team. We want to turn this thing around, right? And it's just make it a promotional opportunity, right?
Yeah, but you also have to have the resources on the back end job to fix these problems, and that doesn't mean developers. That means buy-in from the whole company, right? Like, everyone's got to get behind
the business decision, right? It is a business decision without doubt.
Yeah.
But that decision, and what I'm trying to illustrate, is an opportunity. It really is. Especially today with such visibility into information security issues today. I mean, like never before. We used to bemoan this, even as much as 2-3 years ago, but now, there's been some really high profile things. It's like, it's an opportunity.
I want to transitioning to container image scanning is not doesn't make a great transition. Security by design is more of a better transition, because what's the incentive, right? I think that's a question we're asking with John Deere. What's the incentive for John Deere to take security seriously, fix their vulnerabilities, honor their customers' right to repair and some of the issues that have been brought up? And Google's launching this new program that they're calling security by design. So they launched the security by design on Google Play Academy to help developers identify, mitigate, and proactively protect against security threats. The Android ecosystem, including Google Play, has many built-in security features that help protect developers and users, and the course is an introduction to app security best practices. But again, my question is, what's the incentive? It's great that Google's making this resource available, but why would people use it? Why wouldn't they just go on creating really crappy Android apps that I either choose not to install on my phone or I delete very quickly when it asks for permissions to everything?
Or not, depending on how bad you really want the app, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or I need the app to do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which story was this of yours?
My story number 2.
Story number 2. Okay, yep.
And so container image scanning, this is really awesome, simple little tricks. So this was, there are lots of solutions, open source and commercial, that implement container image scanning, right? Find vulnerabilities inside of your container. And some of these tricks are kind of interesting. So you can, in your container build in your Docker file, do you run apt-get removed apt and just remove apt altogether? And that way, when the container image scanning tries to use apt to get a list of packages in their versions, it will fail.
But then you also have to remove the apt-get.
That might remove both.
I don't know.
That's a good question.
I've never tried to remove it because I need it.
Well, you should. I typically have left it there because I don't run my containers as root, so you don't have permissions to run it anyhow.
Yep.
And if you're privilege escalating within a container, you're going to get root on you're usually privilege escalating from a container into the host and just running stuff on the host as root.
Yep.
So whether my container's running as root or not doesn't matter if I compromise the host. So that was kind of, I thought, a neat little trick. But also, if you know exactly where and how the runtime scanner binary gets injected, find a way to prevent it. So there's one called microscanner that adds a binary at /microscanner. So what you do is, in a prior layer, you symlink /microscanner to dev null, so that when it gets copied in at the next layer, it doesn't really work. And so the scanner never gets deployed, right?
I like that.
Pretty.
That's kind of fun.
That's the author did a great job of thinking like a true hacker. Joshua Stutz is the author of this article. It's a 5-minute read. Really cool, kind of neat container tricks.
This goes to one of those controls where you need confirmation that the control ran.
Yes.
Right? Like it's...
is my stuff running?
Dude,
antivirus.
Like containers has your problem with the Stream Deck written all over it. You have Stream Deck issue a curl command to a Docker container. The curl command finishes, the Docker container continues to run your command.
That's kind of where I was going too. Like, how could I run a command that spawns something off?
Yep, like curl is a great one.
Right.
So me using a Stream Deck, I have a couple buttons on my Stream Deck that issue a curl command. And it's a curl command to an ESP8266 that does some physical function.
So it's a web app.
It's a web app.
And the web app can take that request. The original process dies, but the web app keeps running.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just need a web app on my script. That's doable.
You can even run that web app on the same local host.
Or I could just catch the request with a Python web server.
There you go.
Yeah. To Joff, that was your project you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, quite a while ago now, but there's plenty of Python code that you could apply to that, without a doubt.
Effectively getting that command to execute without inheritance, and you got to pass it to another process.
It's just a web request, right? Yeah.
It's literally in my case. It's literally it's a script that has wget in it that does a wget to a web server that web server knows how to perform a command.
You're basically building a C2.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder back to something that's a principle that we see abused in information security all the time, and that is whenever there's an interface from one system to another, whether that's a Docker container to another Docker container, whether it's inter-process communication, whether it's
network communication between system A and system B, that opportunity for abusing trust boundaries always exists.
Yeah.
And if people don't properly secure those trust boundaries and trust nothing, essentially,
zero trust
in their coding, then you're going to have opportunities there. I mean, I love the suite of Java deserialization, for example, vulnerabilities that still exist to this day, where you can just create custom Java objects for anything that accepts network sockets and deserializes Java, and just accepts objects like openly. I mean, that stuff's all over the place to this day. I mean, just all over the place.
There was a really interesting survey of cybersecurity leaders and how they lack basic cyber hygiene. Now, this goes back to the cobbler and his children's shoes analogy. And it says 48% of cybersecurity leaders use their work computer to log on to social network platforms. Well, yawn. Yeah, I'm like, really? Like, how is that interesting? 77 are willing to accept connection friend requests from unknown individuals. Like, seriously? Like,
especially on LinkedIn.
Well, wait a minute. We are humans as well,
right?
So, okay, how's that? I'm sorry. I mean, actually, LinkedIn is a really good example, Larry, because all of us here on the show have certain public presence.
Sure.
And we get a lot of LinkedIn requests, and I do follow kind of a mental algorithm when I'm looking at them. I kind of look at country of origin. I look at the connections. I look at the
recruiters,
mutual friends. I look at the recruiters. Where do I want to accept them in or not?
Do they work for a client? Have they been in one of my SANS classes?
Growth lead experts. There's a lot of those on LinkedIn.
But that gets tough after a while. I mean, there's thousands of people now that are in my quote unquote network. It does get more difficult. Right?
And the other interesting one from the SANS perspective that I find that is very interesting is that at end of class I say, hey, reach out. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. Find me. Go do some OSINT. I'm also on LinkedIn. And all of those are really easy to find me in some variety of form.
Yeah, I mean the OnlyFans is my favorite.
I don't even I don't even pretend.
I
don't even pretend that I'm not findable. Right? I mean, I know there's people in our industry that try to keep a really, really low profile. But that is totally not us, right? Any of us.
Yeah. And so two things. I find that Europeans will absolutely reach out via LinkedIn. Like Europeans, Asia Pacific, LinkedIn is the way to connect. Paul, thank you for being a pro subscriber to my OnlyFans.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the support.
How does that tie back to LinkedIn again?
It doesn't.
I don't know. I'm confused now. I'm so confused.
Yeah, I don't know what this article was trying to get to. I mean, I think a much better way to spin that was if you want to use social media, how do you protect yourself, right? Like, we as cybersecurity leaders, like, we're gonna, as Larry said, like, we use social media. The more interesting aspects is how we use social media and apply some rigor, protections, screening, that kind of thing, right?
I think us in particular, I just don't think we have a good position in this discussion, right? We're just more public than most other people.
Arguably, Joff, that whole public figure thing. And, for how many years did we accept, Twitter followers and follow everybody back? And I've literally stopped following folks back just because I can't keep up with the volume, which may hurt me in the number of Twitter followers that I get. And for many years, it was that we accepted so many Facebook friend requests. And I knew you managed, Paul, I know you managed that differently. The interesting one that I'm finding lately over the last 2 months is that the algorithm on Facebook for which posts I see has changed significantly, in that I would always see posts from many people. And now I'm starting to see posts like, who the fuck is this person? They're on my friends list, but I haven't seen a post from them in 4 years.
I think they're kind of doing more round robin than they used to.
No,
right?
well, they are.
Yeah, the algorithm is just
The algorithm has
I think
changed.
it's grown to the point where there is so much AI and ML in the algorithm that is trying to make decisions that it's just always making the wrong decisions. It just not. It's like grown to the point where it's completely useless.
Yeah, it was
Okay,
too specific.
so what we're saying is Facebook is now psychotic. Excellent.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, to the point where at Facebook, I'm like, I just go in the groups that I want to get the information that I want to get. Some of that cybersecurity. I join some groups that like for my e-bike and stuff. And like I get really good tips from people that have the same e-bikes. I'm like, I didn't know like if I have that problem, like that's how you fix it because someone posted it in a group. That's the only value that I'm getting out of Facebook. The feed is completely useless because as Joff, I think you're right. It's fucking psychotic right now. And Twitter is just like such an echo chamber, and just there's so many users
Twitter's
now.
a dumpster fire.
Yeah,
man.
it's a dumpster fire. It's like a gigantic dumpster fire.
Well, let's put it this way. My order of priorities is that I do Facebook, and I look at a bunch of those groups that I'm a member of, and some of those groups are amazing.
Memes.
Memes.
Memes is the only reason I use Facebook.
Puns, shaggies, you name it. But there are some real communities that I'm a member of that are like, you go into some community and like you post something like you're a dumb motherfucker and like
there's a lot of out of control groups.
I think I found a number of groups for stuff that I'm interested in that are like, you post any of that stuff that's negative, you're out.
Yeah,
and like a bunch of amazing groups. So like that's my Facebook.
I was like, and then if my pedal assist ever breaks on my e-bike, I'm like, I know how to fix it now. I'm like, that's cool.
Yep.
Thanks for that.
And like, so many things like that, and I get exposed to so many things via Facebook groups that are good communities.
Yeah. What do you get out of Twitter? I don't know. Not much.
So I've been surprised.
My level of social media interaction is Facebook, Instagram. I don't follow a ton of people on Instagram. Instagram stories, Instagram feed on my 2 accounts, and then both of them are pretty limited, so I can catch up pretty quick. And then Twitter. Twitter is my last be sitting there, it's getting to bed. I need to relax a little bit. Okay, I'll check Facebook a little bit. Groups, blah, blah, blah. Great, done. Instagram. Yeah, okay, caught up.
What about LinkedIn? You read your LinkedIn feed?
What's LinkedIn?
Yeah, I don't get any value out of the feed. And I think, each of these platforms has the ability to instant message and direct message. And I'm just like, look, if you want to chat with me, Discord's it. Like that's where I've gone. So like I check social media a little bit here and there, and then I'm like, you want to have a conversation? Like find me on Discord. Like because I can't keep up with all the different platforms.
Yep.
Having said that, I have to say that outside of the borders of the United States, LinkedIn is actually pretty valuable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have noticed that in my own private class outreach, that LinkedIn is a pretty effective tool.
Absolutely.
For that.
I wish someone would make a tool like an autoresponder for Facebook message, Twitter message, and LinkedIn. I don't know how you'd direct. I guess it would be directed by like autorespond. Like, hey, here's my Discord server. You want to chat with me? Here's where it's at. And like the people that really want to chat with you are going to find you. The people you really want to chat with are on a private Slack somewhere.
Yep. So that said, which Discord server am I going to chat with you on, Paul?
I don't know. We're on probably at least 6 or 7 mutual.
That's a challenge. I've got so many Discord servers.
I'm going to find out right now.
How many Discord servers are we on together?
Tying this back to a conversation earlier about that Like War book. I don't know if you guys read that, but it's one of those things.
You're having a useful conversation now, Paul. That's not where we're at the end of the show.
We are on 3.
Only 3.
Only 3.
Not too
Sorry,
bad.
Paul. I'm just busting your balls.
No problem.
Security Weekly, Black Hills Information Security, and Trusted Sec.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, you're not in the... All right. We'll chat after.
You'll have to invite me.
We'll have to...
I'm participating in like 8 different Discord servers minimum right now.
Dude, you don't want to see my Discord stuff. It's 1, 2, 3...
It's nuts.
11, 12, 16, 17, 18, 19,
actually
20.
we've got to the point where we
13.
started to
I'm at
we
25.
started to stand on it like regular expressions, your new lifestyle that I just did. We stood up a Discord server for it, and it works really well. But that's one more Discord server.
It's weird to watch the conversation kind of trickle on when it comes to Discord, right? You go to event, there's Discord, and then it like trickles to nothing.
Yeah, yeah. Because I don't know. I kind of feel like with Discord there should be less servers and more channels. You know what I mean? Like funnel someone to like a security conferences server that we manage, and then have different channels for things. I think people are, because it's so easy to spin up a new server. It's like, oh yeah.
So my server.
But then you said, Paul, then there's no conversations after that like event happens.
Or like with B-sides, I'm actually seeing some of those conversations pick back up as we're getting closer to the this year's B-sides event.
So it's very
kind of nice to have that history from last year too.
Right.
Yep. So I'm on 24 different Discord servers. A bunch of them in folders, a bunch of folders muted.
Me too.
And to the point that
mute's good.
like I think about two of them that I'm a member of that are like that. One is the Adafruit Discord server. That's muted all the time, and I go there and I do something if I have a problem with something Adafruit that I'm dealing with. The other one is Adam Savage's Tested. Like, there's some amazing stuff in there, but the volume is staggering. Thousands of messages a day. And ideally, I signed into Adam Savage's Tested server was to get the one channel, the YouTube feed. And I found out just subscribing to his YouTube channel does
the same thing.
It does the same thing.
A lot of redundancy.
And in fact, was better that way. And muting a bunch of servers, and I find that there's some that are partially muted. Like, I don't read the stuff, and I just go and mark all as read in a folder type of thing. But
I have my one for the family. And I try and get my kids on it, and it's largely for like when they game and stuff. And I call it the Armenian Assassins.
Nice.
That's our family Discord server.
Nice.
Like Paul, I got one too for the same reason. It's like the family gaming server.
Yeah, I got to get them just like more using it regularly, because it'd be a great way to get in touch with them, because they don't answer their phones.
Yep.
Especially when they're gaming. I'm like, can you keep Discord running so I can bug you? And then I think they leave it off so I can't bug them while they're gaming.
And the fun part this episode has been great is that our 13-year-old daughter has been getting into gaming and wants to do the whole social media, Discord, Twitch stream of her playing games.
Mean like my son doesn't just create a Facebook account and doesn't tell anyone?
Oh no, she doesn't do that. She's smarter than that. She's asked and she's gotten permission because she knows that we'll know everything that she's doing. But she has a Twitch account. She has Discord account. And the irony is, until she was called downstairs for dinner, she was listening to the Twitch stream of this show.
Nice.
And we're friends on Discord. We don't share any servers that are in common. Maybe that will change.
Yeah, you gotta have a family Discord. It's fun.
But the sad part is it would just be me and her on the family Discord.
Yeah.
Because the 7-year-old is too young to do Discord. Like, she wants to text us both. And not just yet. Your spelling is a little bit... can be approved. And my wife was like, I'm upset.
Dis what?
Yeah. I'm a Discord. Yeah, that's what I do when I'm upset. Type of thing. And everybody else in the family... Yeah, my sister-in-law would be the only other one that is technology advanced enough to do Discord, and gaming is not her thing, which is what Discord was targeted at, although they're trying to change that.
Yeah, they are. Which I think is a good thing.
Yep.
So. All right, now I think it's time to end the show.
I agree.
Hey, thanks everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and get the hell out of here.